Good evening and welcome to the Glasgow Cycling Road Safety Roadshow. A little bit of housekeeping just before we get started. Just for our fire safety, obviously, so our exits are located just to the left and right of the auditorium. And then if the location of the fire assembly point, upper fire escape, Rotten Row via delivery yard, located at the north elevation of the building. If you know where that is, there we go. We will assemble out the front if we follow the fire exit signs, okay? So we've got an exciting evening planned. We have got four presentations for you this evening. Unfortunately, one of our presentations had to pull out last minute due to illness, unfortunately. But that gives us a little bit more time with our presentations that we have. So I will be your compere for this evening. My name is Callum Dubois. I will also tell you a little bit about my story and sort of why I'm here, why I'm sort of relevant within cycling as such. So my name is Callum Dubois. Like I said, I'm a Paralympian. I'm a GB Para-Nordic skier. I'm also a GB Paracyclist, among other things. In 2017, I had a pretty serious motorcycle accident. I was in a rush to get to my work one day and made a really bad decision to overtake a car. Didn't see a car coming head on. Lost control of my bike and high-sided. I got flipped in the air and came down and landed on my feet. Now, that's resulted in two broken legs, the main one being my left femur. I broke two ribs, punctured a lung, ruptured my diaphragm, just to name a few of the injuries. So at the roadside, I was put into a coma and then airlifted up to the Queen Elizabeth in Glasgow. I was put through the CT scanner. They've seen all my injuries and rushed me into emergency surgery to fix my diaphragm. That would have been the thing that would have killed me first. But within that, I then also had my left femur sorted, but there was a complication that I had cut one of the arteries in my left femur. Now, they kept me in the coma, and 7 days into the coma, they unfortunately had to amputate my left leg. Unbeknown to me, because I was obviously in the coma, which I remained in for a full month. So I woke up one day and obviously realised all of my injuries. My family were in my bed, really miserable, kind of feeling really down, just not sure how I was going to react. And just seeing that kind of made me feel really guilty. I felt really bad that I'd put them through that without even knowing. So after kind of 2 days of getting my head round not having a leg anymore, I decided to make a decision that I would just start taking the mickey out of myself, just to let them know that I was okay, that it's not a life-ending injury. It could just be the start of something. And for me, it was a real catalyst to change and put my kind of accident into a really positive light and make some really big changes in my life. And in the hospital, I had a mad idea that I wanted to go to Paralympics. Not realising the gravity of that and how hard that would be. I thought, oh yes, that's going to be easy. It'll be fine. I'll just do some training and I'll go. Little did I know that I was going to have 4 years of the hardest training I've ever done in my life. But we are going to park that there and we're going to get our first speaker up. So our first speaker for the evening is PC Stuart Sinclair, and he is going to talk to us about cycling legalities, road safety audits and dash cams.
Just talk amongst yourself for 30 seconds till I get mic'd up. Yeah. Got my glass, you know, got my glasses with me. She click that one. Testing. I did this joke on Monday through in Edinburgh. I was going to do the same joke. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Always want to do that. Yeah. Can you hear me up the back? Okay. Is that okay? Coming in through clear. Good stuff. Good evening, everybody. Great to see you all. Thanks for coming along to the Glasgow Cycle Road Safety Roadshow. You'll have a good evening tonight. It's going to be very informative, a lot of information. I'm going to be imparting over the next sort of 25 minutes, half an hour or so. What I don't want this to end up, and I hope you don't think that this is going to be the police coming up and pointing their finger and lecturing at you and telling you the rights and the wrongs and insulting your intelligence. That's not the purpose of the evening. It's meant to be an information evening. We're going to cover quite a lot this evening. Probably in quite a lot of detail about the highway codes, the updated rules specifically that came into effect back in 2022. And we'll talk a wee bit about cycle legislation and also our new desk system as well, which is the ability to report crime via an electronic portal. So for those of you who have got video cameras on your helmets, is there quite a few in the room that have got maybe video cameras on their helmets? Yeah, excellent one there, brilliant. Good. Yeah, good to see. Then it's going to give the ability, if you witness a crime out in the road or are potentially a victim of a crime, if it's a close pass, somebody passes you too close when you're out on your bike, you've got that footage and you want to report it to the police. There's this portal that's going to give you the opportunity to do that. As I said, hopefully you'll get quite a lot of good information from myself tonight. So I'll start off just with the formal introduction. So PC Stuart Sinclair's my name. I'm a road police officer that works through in Edinburgh. I've been a police officer now for 20 years in road policing for a total of 13. I currently have an operational role, but I also do a lot of road safety work with Edinburgh City Council in and around traffic management, as well as a lot of road safety presentations that I do with a lot of the schools through in Edinburgh as well. So it's kind of a hybrid role. Part and parcel of my role, being a road police officer, is dealing with road accidents, collisions on a daily basis. And unfortunately, over the years, since I joined up, even more so since being in road policing, I've had to deal with an awful lot of fatal and serious accidents. It's one of the hardest parts of my job. It is challenging, time consuming as well, and very resource intensive for myself and my colleagues out there. So if I can avoid having to go to these on a daily basis by giving road safety talks to schools, etc., coming along speaking to yourselves to try and get that information out to keep ourselves safe on the network, I would do it every single day in my service if I could, because I think it's really, really worthwhile. And yeah, some of the other organisations that I present to are the military, as well as Scottish Water as well. So yeah, like I touched on just at the beginning there, I will talk a wee bit about highway code rules as I said, specifically the new rules that came into effect from 2022, a wee bit about cycling legalities, offences under the Road Traffic Act, 1988. We'll talk a wee bit about bike setup and what you should have on your pedal cycle out there on the road, especially this time of year. I'll talk a wee bit about the road safety audit process that I get involved in with Edinburgh City Council. And as I said, Police Scotland's desk system, which I'll touch on just at the end of the presentation. So the updated highway code rules, they came into effect on the 29th of January 2022, so coming up 4 years now. And the biggest change with the highway code rule is that there's this new hierarchy now of road users. Is everybody aware of this? Has anyone heard of the new hierarchy? A lot of nodding heads, that's great. That's a good start. So yeah, the hierarchy was brought into effect, and it basically places these road users that are most at risk in the event of a collision at the top of the hierarchy. Okay, so you've got your pedestrians right at the top, and you've got your heavy good vehicles down at the bottom. Okay, so if we flip that on its head, you'd be the heavies are responsible for the cars, responsible for the bikes, the horse-drawn carriages, right the way down to the pedestrians. So there's this hierarchy now where the higher up or the lower down the list you are, the more responsibility you have for the more vulnerable road users. So it is important that, it goes without saying, all road users are aware of the highway code, are considerate to other road users, and also understand their responsibility for the safety of others. At the end of the day, it's shared road space out there. We're all sharing, the same space to get from A to B, okay? And these rules are there, okay, as a guide, but also, as I said, if you don't abide by these rules, as we'll find out later on, you can end up being prosecuted, not just as a cyclist, but as a driver as well, but we'll cover a wee bit of that later on. So the first rule, it comes under what's called H1. So Rule H1 states that those in charge of vehicles that can cause the greatest harm in the event of a collision bear the greatest responsibility. So just what I've touched on there, and you can see the list there that it mentions. The principle mainly applies most strongly to drivers of larger vehicles, passenger vehicles, vans, minibuses, etc., right the way down, motorbikes. Cyclists and horse riders, likewise, have got a responsibility as well to reduce danger to pedestrians. So you can see how you're working your way down that hierarchy. However, none of this detracts from the responsibility, again, of all road users, including pedestrians, cyclists, and horse riders, to have regard for their own and other road users' safety. And it goes without saying, always remember that the people you encounter may have impaired sight, hearing, or mobility issues, and that might not be obvious. And we'll cover a wee bit about the shared cycle routes. That's probably applies to the most. So Rule H2, this applies to drivers, motorcyclists, and cyclists, and states at a junction, you should give way to pedestrians crossing or waiting to cross a road into which or from which you're turning. Now, that's quite a big one. And I think this was quite a shock to a lot of people. I know I'm speaking to a cycling audience tonight. However, 80% of cyclists are drivers. So obviously, I'm sure a lot of you get your driving licenses as well. And I think it did come as a big shock to a lot of motorists that they now had to give this priority. I take it everyone's aware now of this new priority, the highway code. Do we all comply with it? No, a couple of. I'm not gonna point you out. Don't worry, orange top. It was a difficult one. It really was a difficult one to try and get your head around. It's done in other countries, but it wasn't done here until, as I said, when they brought it into effect nearly 4 years ago. But it's an important one because a lot of these junctions now that you're turning into, or side roads that you're turning into, have got the central islands, and people that are maybe confident, maybe naively confident that a lot of drivers are fully aware of these updates, are just sometimes just going to wander out into that central island and just wander straight across the bell mouth of that junction, not looking, okay, expecting that they're going to be given that right of way. And as I said, not a lot of drivers, or there's still an awful lot of drivers out there that aren't aware of that updated legislation and rules. So just be mindful of that. And it does also apply to cyclists as well. So if you're turning off the main road into a side road and somebody's waiting to cross, that pedestrian does have right of way. You should give them right of way. All right. We'll cover the shoulds and the must nots later on, because there is differences there, and that will all become clearer on just in the next couple of slides. Okay. Yep, cyclists should give way to pedestrians on shared use cycle tracks and to horse riders on bridleways, and only pedestrians may use the pavement. Pedestrians include wheelchair and mobility scooter users. Pedestrians may use any part of the road and use cycle tracks as well as the pavement, unless there are signs prohibiting pedestrians. So you'll see all these cycle tracks. I work in Edinburgh. I know I used to live in Glasgow, so I kind of know the layout of Glasgow as well. And I know they're adopting a very similar process with the cycling infrastructure. And Malcolm's going to speak to you later on about some of the designs. But certainly in Edinburgh, they've got a lot of the dedicated cycling lanes now. They created them for COVID. So during COVID time, they had what's called spaces for people, where they put these dedicated cycle tracks in. They were meant to be temporary, but the Edinburgh City Council have turned a lot of them into a permanent scheme now. Cyclists can use them, but they don't need to. You can still cycle onto the main carriageway. Obviously, drivers can sometimes get a little bit frustrated. They'll keep their horn. They're saying, well, there's a cycle lane there. Why don't you use it? That's your prerogative. Okay, you don't have to. However, they've put it there for a reason, to try and give you an element of protection if you're in that lane. The issue we've got in Edinburgh, though, unfortunately, just now is that this time of year, a lot of leaves in these cycle lanes, and Edinburgh City Council aren't particularly good at clearing these lanes. That can actually pose a bit of a hazard. So as a driver, you should maybe be expecting more cyclists to be staying out with that lane, because they won't want to stay in there, because they'll see it as a hazard themselves. These kind of wet leaves and that aren't particularly well maintained. Yes, that's one thing to keep in mind, just if you are a driver out there on the road. Rule H3 for drivers and motorcyclists. So yeah, this is quite a big one as well. So you should not cut across cyclists going ahead when you're turning into or out of a junction or changing direction or lane, just as you would not turn across the path of another motor vehicle. So you can see there from the graphic, quite clearly shows the cyclist is going straight over the bell mouth of that junction. The car in the picture is wishing to turn left. It's quite clearly got its indicator on, but we should be giving priority to the cyclist cycling past that road. If there are a stream of cyclists, if it's a busy time of the day, there's maybe a group of cyclists out riding. As a driver, if you're turning into that side road, you should be giving way to these cyclists. Do you think you would need to stop your vehicle if you didn't find a gap? Would you have to stop and allow all the cyclists to clear that junction, or do you think you could just cut in front with the cyclists? You need to stop, even if it's on. But people say, but it's on the live carriageway. Oh yeah, but it's going to be the way certainly Edinburgh's going now, like the 20-mile-an-hour limit. So it's a low-speed road. It's in a built-up area. There shouldn't be any hazard as long as you've got that indicator on. If you are a driver, you allow the cycle lane to clear, allow the cyclist to go past that junction. Once it's clear, check the mirrors again, a quick shoulder check as well, double check you're not catching a flashing light out the corner of your eye, and then execute your manoeuvre into that side road. Okay, that's a really important one. And yeah, you should not stop and wait for a safe gap in the flow of cyclists, or you should stop and wait for a safe gap in the flow of cyclists. Yeah. Freudian slip. This includes when cyclists are approaching, passing, or moving off from a junction, moving past or waiting alongside stationary or slow-moving traffic, and travelling around a roundabout. So is that quite clear then from that graphic, what you need to do as a driver? I'm going to probably take questions at the end, but I'll take a quick couple just now, yeah? It's judging it. It's judging it. So I think as a cyclist, yeah, don't just assume that the car is going to stop. You need to read the road and read kind of what other drivers are doing. And this is a big thing. A lot of my training, when I did my driver training in advanced driving, they teach you small things like trying to recognize the behaviors of other drivers and other road users just by body movements. So if you're a cyclist out there looking into a car, have a look to see what they're doing. Are they looking over their shoulder? Does it look as if they're imminently about to execute that left turn? Or are they just looking straight ahead? They've got the indicator on. Maybe they've left it on. I'm not quite sure. But answer to your question, just judge it. Use the brakes. If you think they are going to cut in front of you, yeah, obviously just pull back. But that's really important. As I said, please don't just assume if you're a cyclist out there that drivers are going to do that. Try and read that body language and see what the car is doing on the lane, the carriageway. Does that answer your question? Yeah. What did you? In a similar. Did you have a camera or did you report it? Or? Did you? Sure. Did they get the driver? That's what I'm saying. Did you report you got the driver? That would have been so just on that, we'll touch on that later on. That would have been a careless driving all day long. It sounds as if it was a careless driving. They've not done their checks, the proper checks. Yes, a few expletives maybe thrown in there as well, were they? Yeah, and it's open to interpretation, but and we'll discuss that right at the end of the presentation. We talk about the footage. When we view the footage, we have to then make that assessment of whether that falls into the remit of careless driving or potentially dangerous driving as well. So yeah, just moving on, walking, cycling, riding shared space. Again, just what I touched on earlier on. There is new guidance in the code about routes and spaces which are shared by people walking, cycling, riding horses. I take it you've all seen that, these shared sort of footpaths and cyclepaths, just denoted by that sign there. People cycling, riding a horse or driving a horse-drawn carriage should respect the safety of people walking in these spaces, but people walking should also take care not to obstruct or endanger them. People cycling are asked not to pass people walking, riding a horse or driving a horse-drawn vehicle closely or at high speed, particularly from behind. there's nothing worse when you're on these paths, you know, as a pedestrian, and you've got someone on a race bike and they're flying past you and they've not even had the courtesy maybe to sound their bell. We've got a bell, especially with your children or you're walking your dog. As I keep saying, it's shared space. Okay, the clues in the word there, it's shared space. All right. It's not just an entitlement as, you know, you not just get a kind of entitlement as a pedestrian or a cyclist there. We're all sharing the same space. All right. So just be mindful of that. And yeah, if you've got a bell on your bike, please use it. Slow down when necessary, let people walking know that they're there. Yeah, just using a bell. Remember that people walking may be deaf, blind, or partially sighted. Yeah, don't assume they've seen or heard you. And yeah, just don't pass a horse on the horse's left. Positioning. So this is a big one on the road when cycling. I get asked this a lot of the time in my job, just if I'm dealing with an accident a collision at the side of the road, people ask me about the right position to be in when you're cycling. So the highway code guidance is for you to ride in the centre of your lane on quiet roads. So it's what's called the primary position. So that's being in the centre of the road when it's quiet, and slower moving traffic as well, and at the approach to junctions or narrowings. So yeah, if you are going to execute, if you're a cyclist and you're wanting to turn left into a side road, have a wee quick check, come out into that primary position, left arm signal, and then come round. All right, it tends to be a safer manoeuvre than just cutting a corner or bumping over the pavement. But just always do that wee check. If you are coming out to the primary position at any point, again, I don't want to insult your intelligence, but yeah, have that wee quick check. Arm signal, check, move out. Keep at least half a metre away from the curb edge when riding in busy roads with vehicles moving faster than you. So if you are in that primary position, the road's starting to open up, it's getting wider. Okay, there's no obvious hazards on the road ahead, and you think, right, I've got quite a few vehicles behind me now, then yeah, pull into the side of the road, keep that half metre away from the pavement and let the vehicles overtake you. All right. And yeah, it goes without saying, take care when passing parked vehicles, leaving enough room to avoid being hit if a car door is opened. I did give this example on Monday's talk, but I was involved about 3-4 years ago dealing with an incident, and unfortunately a cyclist was coming down a hill at a great rate of knots, and there's been a gentleman who's pulled his vehicle into the side of the road. He's opened the door without checking, and the cyclist has gone straight into the side of the door, and we catapulted over the door and landed in his head, and ended up dying of his injuries. It was horrendous to deal with, actually, a really difficult one. But there was marks all over the roads. My colleagues in the collision investigation department came along. They found marks on the roads. There was enough for them. There was enough evidence, witness evidence, and I think we had CCTV as well, just to back up to show exactly what happened. And unfortunately, the cyclist was carrying, we think, was potentially too much speed down the hill, and they were in the tuck position. So just be mindful of that when you are obviously a cyclist and you're going into a busy street with the parked cars, especially in around maybe in the mornings or kind of rush hour time, when you're maybe expecting people to, you know, return to their homes, but there is a chance that those doors could come open. Okay, so just be mindful of that. And likewise, if you're a driver and you're getting out, have a quick check over your shoulder as well before you open that door. Overtaking when driving or cycling, you may cross a double white line if necessary, provided the road is clear to overtake someone cycling or riding a horse if they're travelling at 10 miles an hour or less. Does everyone know that rule? Is everyone quite comfortable with that rule? Yeah. And that's quite important because there can be a lot of misunderstanding of double white lines and what they actually mean. People are never quite sure what they can do, especially if the speeds are really, really low. But it's quite clear there, and we'll say if there's someone cycling, riding a horse, etc., or a vehicle less than 10 miles an hour, then you can cross that double white to overtake. The guidance for drivers and motorcycle riders when overtaking vulnerable road users as follows. So again, this is a massive one as well. Has everyone heard of Operation Close Pass? The Police Scotland do, yeah? That's good. That's really good. Most of you have actually said yes. It's massive in Edinburgh. I think it's quite big in Glasgow as well. My colleagues through the road policing unit at Govan should be running these events on a sort of monthly basis out in the communities. It's basically a big mat, and We have a police car placed on the mat, and we have a bicycle there, and it's basically like a visual representation of the distance you should afford a cyclist when you overtake them. Okay, so people can see. So it's 1.5 meters is the minimum standard. If you can give more space when you're overtaking a cyclist, then please do. If the road's clear ahead, there's nobody coming out the side roads onto your main route, okay, then take as much room as you can when you overtake that cyclist. You know yourself when you're out there on your bikes, when somebody passes you, and I'm a cyclist myself, and I love being out on the bike, and if I see a car passing me and they've afforded me a greater distance than 1.5 meters, I will give them a nod and I will put my hand up and thank them. Does anyone else do that? Yeah, I do that because it just makes, they might then check their mirror, and they should be checking their mirror if they're going to be moving back in. And if they see you go like that, then it's that kind of almost, actually, yeah, that was good what I did. And they'll hopefully then go and do it again next time. So if you can afford somebody more than 1.5 meters, please do it. Yeah, wait behind them, don't overtake. Again, won't insult your intelligence, and it goes without saying. If you can't overtake, please be patient. Sit behind the cyclist, don't sit on, and again, I'm speaking to you as if you're drivers, but don't sit in their back wheel. Okay, don't sit in their back wheel, just hang back, wait for that opportunity, and then get the indicator on, and again, just overtake when it's safe to do so. Yes, sir, up the back. No, and I was asked that on Monday, there isn't. If you have one of the recorders, the video recorder dash cams on the rear of your bike, and somebody maybe, whatever it is, you feel somebody's been really, really close to you for, say, 1/4 of a mile, they've not stayed off your back tyre, they've maybe touched your back tyre at some point as they've pulled out, that's careless driving or potentially dangerous driving. If you've got that footage, we would look at it, if we got it in through the desk system, interpret it, or analyse it, interpret it, and think, actually, they're far too close. There's no distance, but we'd be able to tell just from the manner they're driving how close they were. Ultimately, we'd let the fiscal decide on that. They would then make that final decision if they wanted to proceed in a prosecution based on the video evidence. But again, there's no set distance. Okay. People cycling at junctions, junctions with small cycle traffic lights at eye level. Yeah, we've probably seen them. There's a lot of them in Edinburgh. I don't know, I'm assuming there's quite a few of them through here, Malcolm, is there? Yeah, same sort of idea. The traffic light setup for cyclists at the end of the cycling lanes. Just be mindful of them, treat them as if you're a driver. Same sort of idea. People cycling have priority when going straight ahead at the junctions. We talked about that. And yeah, safety in mind when executing all these manoeuvres, it goes without saying. Roundabouts. Code's been updated to clarify people driving or riding a motorcycle should give priority to people cycling on roundabouts. They should not attempt to overtake cyclists within their lane, and they should allow cyclists to move across their path as they travel around the roundabout. Just take care of a roundabout if you see a cyclist. About 2 weeks ago, I was involved in an incident, or it was a close call, shall we say. Did anyone know Conley Bank in Edinburgh at all? Yeah. So you've got the bottom of Orchard Road, just before you turn right to go to the Waitrose. So I was coming down Orchard Road, heading to work at Fetty's, 6:15 in the morning, dark, where my high vis, had my lights on. I was coming down to the junction to take a right turn. So I came onto the roundabout, arm out to the right, and I was conscious of a bus that was coming down Crew Road North. So the bus was about to come onto the roundabout, but obviously it would have to have given way to me because I was on its right. And I've come round the roundabout, and the bus hasn't stopped. It's literally come straight onto the roundabout, and I've had to literally just slam the anchors on both brakes and nearly had a endo, yeah. People of a certain age remember an endo, you hit the front brake too hard, back wheel hops up, basic endo in the middle of the roundabout. And the bus driver was like, came onto the roundabout, and he like looked at me, shrugged his shoulders. Now, if I hadn't looked at that bus or kept an eye on that bus, and I was looking at my exit road up towards Waitrose, I was under that bus. So that was a close call. I get into work and I had a bit of a moment, shall we say. You know, it was a difficult one. So we got in touch with the company. I'll just leave it at that. So just be mindful of that. If you are coming onto the roundabout, please be careful. Look, see what the other cars are doing. And there's not a chance that, you know, what that bus did to me, that's going to happen to you. If you're going round to the roundabout as well to the right, you can stick in the left lane, just keep the arm out, hug the inside of the roundabout and work your way around. Cycling legalities. So the Highway Code clearly identifies all mandatory rules with the words must not. Points to relevant legislation and sets out the penalties. So that's what I was saying earlier on. So the musts and must nots, if you don't comply with them, it's criminal legislation. Okay. The should nots and the do nots may not lead to prosecution. They can, but they may not lead to prosecution, but they can nevertheless be used as evidence to establish liability in court for civil purposes. And Roz will come on and talk about that in the next presentation. Right, so just be mindful of that. The law is the law. Must not. You must not do that. Okay, you must not overtake somebody and use solid whites if they're doing above 10 miles an hour. If you do, dangerous driving, careless driving, dangerous cycling, careless cycling. Okay, the should not may not lead to prosecution, but again, you've got that liability element in a civil case potentially. Where there is no law, regulation, or local bylaw prohibiting cyclists from doing something specifically, they can still be prosecuted for dangerous cycling or careless and inconsiderate cycling. Again, just dependent on the circumstances, but they are offences that are used. Thankfully, not frequently, but they are used. I know of a case a number of years ago in Edinburgh where a cyclist pulled at a junction in front of a car, causing the car to veer off the road, slam into a lamppost, and unfortunately the passenger was killed as a result of the cyclist's actions. Okay. So that individual was charged with dangerous cycling. It was a bigger picture. There's a lot more to it, but there are offences out there. Okay, so just be mindful of that. The careless and inconsiderate cycling, a lot of the time, certainly in Edinburgh, there's a lot of the cyclists will be in the road and then we'll jump up onto the pavement and then go back onto the road, back in the pavement, onto a cycle path, maybe through a shop door, whatever it is, out the other side of the shop, I don't know. But there can be a lot of cycling behaviour that can then amount potentially to inconsiderate or careless cycling. And I know that's been done in the past as well. Yes, sir. Not in the pub at home, sober, but still loving it. Well, that's a good question. Who thinks you can? You know, a few drinks. Is there a law? Is there a drink cycle limit? No, there's not a drink cycle limit. However, if we stopped you and you were under the influence, then potentially we could be looking at a careless cycling, couldn't we, or a dangerous cycling, depending on what the alcohol consumption has caused you to do on that pedal cycle, right? So there's no limit, like driving. Okay, because obviously we can't put points on a license as such. But as I said, what we see as officers, if we stop you, what we smell, we could potentially put you in the breathalyzer, use that as evidence, then that can all amount to a careless cycling charge potentially. Sorry? Not legally. Not legally. However, you can. If somebody voluntary agrees, then they can provide a breath test and that can be used. But ultimately, we're looking for alcohol smell. You keep an eye on you, Roz. Get my Intel systems up to date. You're hovering about. You're about to tell me to cut it. How many minutes? How many? 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Right. Let's do it. 5 minutes. Can manage that. Common law crime, culpable and reckless conduct can be used to prosecute cyclists who cause serious injury. Again, culpable and reckless, an act so careless as to show complete and utter disregard for the safety of others. Again, it's open to interpretation, but again, the circumstances could be from us interpreting CCTV footage, dash cam footage, whatever it is, but that's a competent charge potentially as well. Culpable homicide can be used circumstances where cyclists cause the death of a person. Cycling on a pavement is a criminal offence irrespective of the size of the bike. Is it heavily enforced by Police Scotland? No, it's not. There's common sense, especially it comes to your younger generation, are confident on the roads, but it's not something that potentially, or it's not something that Police Scotland are heavy on with regards to prosecutions. Drug cycling, no limits. However, cycling under influence is an offence, fit to ride, etc. Is what we're talking about. Key messaging, yeah. goes without saying, make sure your lights are on, white lights in the front, red light, rear red lights. You've got a reflector in the rear as well. Must ensure your brakes are efficient, and you should fit a bell and use when appropriate. And look out for blind spots, especially in larger vehicles. I've only got a couple of minutes. Can we just leave them to the end? Yeah. Right. Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah. Go for it. Uh-huh. Yeah, the reflector just needs to be in the back, not in the pedals, on the back. Okay, so that's the most up-to-date legislation, but the pedals, if you want to put them in the pedals, you can. You can. It's just making yourself more visible at the end of the day. What I will say, actually, just talk about the lights and what we should be having in the bikes. The lights at the front, the white light at the front, please make sure that it's dipped. Okay, because I got a lot of complaints about people having their light literally like a headlight, a full beam in a car. So if you're cycling in a cycle path and I come across it myself and I'm on the cycle path, you're getting blinded by this huge lamp in the front of somebody's bike. Please dip it. Okay, because again, if somebody crashes as a result of that light and there's witnesses saying, aye, that light's far too bright, and it was sitting up, then potentially you could be looking at a careless cycling charge. Okay, as it is an offence. So try and keep that light dipped if you can. We, yeah. Well, it's totally, it's the same principle as a full beam. I mean, what do you do when you've got your full beams on? Yeah. 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 No, I mean, I don't know in the back of maybe the packaging. There's maybe an advisory. I don't know because I've not bought a set of lights recently, but there should be that guide. Yes. Sir. Yeah. Well, actually, I can't find anywhere in the highway code that says that. What I've just told you. This is for me. This is common sense. This is again. It's coming back to that shared road space, and looking after everybody else. And if you've got a big high beam shining in someone's face on a shared space, to me that's not safe. So I agree. I think it should be. I think there should be a rule in there. So I'll press on, folks. And we'll do the rest of the questions at the end. There is a campaign we run in Edinburgh on an annual basis called Be Bright, Be Seen, a really, really successful event. We go out in person, there we go, there's the close pass mat there you can see with the marked police car and the bike. Again, just showing that visual representation of space. And we stop and engage with pedestrians and cyclists. If they don't have lights on their bike, we give them lights, we give them some high-vis equipment, and basically just do some general kind of engagement with them. All age groups, a young child. That was the Roseburn cycle path last year, and with the buses along with us talking blind spots. There's a gentleman from Deliveroo there, just getting a high vis vest given to him, and we do security bike marking as well. I think they're going to be bringing something similar through in Glasgow. My colleagues are in the process of trying to set something like this up in Glasgow, but it is very successful. And there's some of the equipment that we hand out, lights and some high vis goodies. Yeah, some of the key messages I'm not going to go over all, just let you skim read that. That's some of the key messaging we give for drivers. And yeah, basically just saying it's shared road space to everybody. We're not victim blaming as the police, and I get criticised with this. Right? We're not victim blaming. Okay, a very balanced opinion. I certainly do as a police officer. Okay, because I speak to people as not just cyclists, but as drivers as well. Okay, because as I said right at the beginning of the presentation, got that shared responsibility to keep each other safe on the network. The road safety audits, I'm not going to steal Eric's thunder because he's going to talk to me about that. So is Malcolm. I get involved with the audits. So if there is infrastructure going out there onto the network in Edinburgh, which there is, new infrastructure, I'll get called in at what's called the stage 3 element, where it's been built. I'll then go out there with likes of Eric, Malcolm, and actually another colleague in the room, Richard. Where are you, Richard? Yeah, Richard as well. We'll go out and we'll have a look at it, and I'll make comments to the auditors as well. And generally we agree. I think you're not right in saying, Eric, I would say 10 out of 10 times we agree. What they think is unsafe, I will absolutely agree with them. And that always then goes into the report and gets fed back to the local authority for them to decide if they wish to make that change. And finally, just the desk system, digital evidence sharing capability, I touched on at the beginning of the presentation there. It's going to give you the ability to report a crime if you have recorded it or if you have some sort of digital footage. Call it in 101, an officer will be allocated a job and an electronic link will be sent to you. You can then upload your journey cam footage and an officer will have a look at it, determine if a crime has actually been committed, and then let you know, and then they will then go on and investigate it. It's not a self-reporting portal, so it's not saying to you, right, here's the link, go and send us 4 hours of your cycling footage out in the Pentlands, and we're going to go through it all. And it's not that at all. It's for specific offences that you wish to report. It's a one-time only link. But it's getting quite good feedback. It's probably giving us a wee bit more work, but I think the way it's going now is it's saving us getting to somebody's house and waiting for them to burn footage onto a disc and then for us to take away and go somewhere else to lodge the production, etc., etc. So it's been changed every sort of few weeks just to kind of make it a wee bit better, but generally the feedback's pretty good on it. So that is it. I've talked for 30, probably nearly 40 minutes. My mouth's really, really dry and I'm well over time as usual. Gentlemen, want to ask me a question? Do you want to take a question? Yeah, yes, sir. No different previous where not not because it's purely for my wife's fed up with really? Yeah. That's interesting because that's not what it's made. That wasn't how it was intended to work. Have you fed that back in? Okay. But then beginning of the other two but on each page that kind of point of your basically time with the portal and then some of the yeah, maybe that will come eventually, but I think that's the way they've wanted to run the system just now. What I would do is I would put something in an email, feed it back in. Okay, because the more feedback we can get from the public about it, the more we can improve the system. Yes, sir. But the system is yes. Yes. If it isn't, so it should be a police officer, all police officers should know if it is specific road traffic related, they should be fully aware of the laws with regards to careless dangerous driving, careless dangerous cycling. If they're unclear or not sure, not confident, they will contact ourselves in road policing and a specialist road policing officer will have a look at that footage and either agree with them or say to them, well, actually, I'd maybe think about going down this route as opposed to that route. And generally, that's what my colleagues in division are advised to do. If they're not sure, not confident, contact a specialist officer who will determine exactly what offence that will consist of. Okay.
So one more question. What is a paper? In an urban situation, relatively straightforward. But you know, suburban or rural situation, sometimes have fast A road and yeah, they have a meter and a half of grass and then a hard surface footpath.
Yes, it's all part. So it's all part of the road. So the road includes the grass verge, the grass verges. Okay, the best way to look at it is tarmac grass, and then distinguish between that. If there's no what we all commonly know as a pavement, then you just stick as close to the edge of the tarmac as you can to that grass verge. Okay, if it's on the grass verge, then it's off with the road. Okay, potentially depends how far off the road it is. But again, that's open to interpretation. Thanks very much for your time, folks. So I hope that was quite informative, and I'll maybe take some questions later on at the break. But yeah, hopefully you all enjoyed that. Thank you. Well,
we can certainly try. Oh no, I'm sure it'll be
way over time again, aren't we?
Right, we'll leave them to figure that out and then move on. So a little bit just about sort of my recovery kind of going forward. So obviously after the loss of a leg, you need to learn to walk again. So that was kind of my first goal, if you like, after losing my leg. And once I sort of learned to walk and got used to my prosthetic leg, I was just chasing other goals. I started to get into my fitness again after losing my leg, just to build up some strength, just because I'd lost so much from being in a coma. And that really kind of got a grip of me, it got its teeth into me, and I just started to absolutely love that feeling of just, going out and smashing myself. And I'm sure a lot of people in here kind of know that same feeling of just doing some work and feeling really good after it. So there's a few wee images of kind of training camps and stuff I was on. So this was in Livigno, up the top corner, on a roller ski. So in the summer months, we don't have snow, so we need to find alternative transport. So we just use a mountain skateboard, push ourselves along. The middle one at the top, this one here, that was a race in Germany at the start of my sort of career. And then down the bottom here on the mountain bike, obviously riding. This was I used cycling as an opportunity to get off my arms, to give them a rest, and obviously to keep other things fit and healthy. As you can see, I cycle single leg, mainly for the fact that my leg always falls off when I cycle, which is a little bit of an inconvenience. So, so yeah, just jump on the bike single leg and off you go. So we'll move on to our next presentation, which is a bad day on the bike. Now, this is presented from one of Cycle Law Scotland's very own, Ros Galloway.
Oh, that's awkward.
You can probably hear me speak anyway.
You can't keep that picture.
Spraying it till they with it still on. There we go. Can we all hear me? Good. So, nobody ever calls me having had a nice bike ride. Nobody ever calls me when they've had a good day on the bike. And the only time I ever hear from you lot is when the bad thing has happened and it's been a very bad day on the bike. So whether it's been a collision with usually another road user, another vehicle, or a road defect taking off your bike, or sometimes something more unusual, like racing accidents, dog bite incidents, nobody ever comes to me with a good day on the bike. So I'm Ros Galloway. I'm one of the cycling specific personal injury solicitors at Cycle Law Scotland. We've organised this tonight, and thank you very much all for coming along. I'm a personal injury solicitor first, and that's true literally and figuratively. I've been a personal injury solicitor now for about 20 years. And at the time, I'd never thought about taking up cycling. I hadn't ridden a bike since I was a child. I'd taken an adult cycling proficiency class run by Cycling UK in Glasgow City. And I'm based up in Aberdeenshire, so riding in Glasgow City was terrifying. But I did that, and then I joined the Pedal for Scotland, the sportive. And that was mind-blowing to ride 50 miles, mind-blowing. And then one thing leads to another, and the next thing you know, your life has been taken over by cycling. So personal injury solicitor first, then I started cycling, and then about 7 years ago, I joined Cycle Law Scotland. There we go. What's that? So yeah, that's one of the sportives we did. So cycling up Cala. I don't know why I'm doing one-handed or what I'm trying to cycle there. So like I say, I've been cycling now for probably about 10 years, have a go heroes, sportives, triathlons, started joining a cycling club. I started racing, and a couple of years ago I qualified and rode in the UCI World Championships for Grand Fondos. I got humiliated by the Belgians, that's them up the front there. But I was there. So always good. So I think as a personal injury solicitor, when I'm representing cyclists, that I can only do that well if I understand cycling myself. And I do because I ride bikes, but there's part of understanding of what it's like to be a cyclist and on the road, but also understanding how much cycling means to people. Because it's not the same as driving or walking. You don't identify as a pedestrian. But a lot of people will identify as a cyclist, and it means an awful lot to them when perhaps their injuries has taken that away from them, or they've lost their fitness or lost their bikes through an accident. So a lot of my job is where, or my entire job is where there's been a very bad day on the bike, an accident's happened and somebody's come to me to seek compensation from a third party for negligence and for something that's gone wrong. So what I do is get involved in assessing injury, getting compensation to allow for rehabilitation. The joke is bicycle's third here, but we all know the bike comes first. But obviously, if your bicycle's been damaged by an incident, then you might want compensation for the repairs and replacement. Your helmet, your kit, help and assistance that you've needed from your family, you'll need compensation for expenses, loss of income if you've been off your work as a result of your accident. Even if it's more long term, there might be things like loss of pension rights if you've lost your career as a result of an accident, if you need a new home or adaptations, if your home is no longer fit for you to live in as a result of your injuries. And that's a huge part of my job, is trying to get all the best evidence to understand how an accident's impacted somebody so that I can get them the best amount of compensation. We also get involved in an awful lot in rehabilitation. So as well as getting money, I suppose at the end of the day, one of the wonderful things that we can do is help maximize somebody's recovery as much as we can by providing for the best rehabilitation to get them access to the treatment that they need, physiotherapy, counselling, even things like prosthetics where there has been a loss of limbs, case managements to tie all the treatments together to complement what is available on the NHS. So as I say, that's a huge part of my job, is getting compensation and proving responsibility for an accident and making sure that we get the right amount of compensation for our clients is my bread and butter. So as I say, nobody comes to me with a good day on the bike. So doing the job I do and seeing what I see, people often ask if it puts me off cycling. And the answer is obviously no, because I'm still riding a bicycle, but it does certainly change how I choose to ride as a result. So I'm going to show some videos of some accidents that we have dealt with. And this is a massive trigger warning because many people here might have been involved in close shaves, actual accidents, perhaps they're dealing with cases just now. If you want, there's Kit Kats outside. I don't mind. You can go for early Kit Kats. So I've got some videos of some actual accidents. There's nothing too gory. There's a bit of gore later, but I'll give you some notice. So as I say, please feel free, because I can understand that this might be difficult for some people. And also please know that what I'm going to say is not a criticism or a judgment. I'm not here to preach, and we've been briefed well by PC Sinclair on the law and how it applies, but what I see on a day-to-day about the common accidents has changed how I choose to ride. And I just wanted to share that with you. And it's, as I say, it's not preaching. You still make your own decisions, but it definitely has changed what I do. So with some common accidents I see day in, day out, here is some 5 things I'd never do on a bicycle as a personal injury solicitor. So, number 1. Believe that the highway code protects me. He just spent 40 minutes talking to you about it, and I'm like, no use. So there's been obviously recent changes to the highway code, and I know that hopefully I couldn't see when we're asking, do people know about this? And hopefully most of you would say yes. But this is a massive echo chamber of people that are interested in cycle safety and road safety. So I don't think that this is a representative at all. And for example, if I ask my 75-year-old mom, she has got no idea. She's still doing it about in her car. I reckon very few of the general population, I probably wouldn't even say 10%, know about these changes. I don't think that they've been publicised nearly enough. I think they're great changes, but it's almost more dangerous to have these changes and people don't know about them. as I say, an opinion, not a criticism. But I think it is concerning. The other thing to say is that the highway code, and it actually says this in it, the highway code does not give you right of way in any circumstances. And that's the thing that we often think, I have right of way, I have right of way, I had right of way. Right of way doesn't help you if you're under a bus. So the highway code literally says it does not give you right of way in any circumstances, but it does tell you when you should give way to other users. And it says always give way if it can help to avoid an incident. So we've seen, where did you get the laser thing? Magic. I pointed out this, it appears there. So we've seen, it was an infographic like this that we saw from PC Sinclair. These ones are the dangerous ones that we've seen. I've got a video of a very similar incident. So, there we go. So we can see the cycle lane. It's one of these protected cycle lanes, just in the far side of the road there. And that's an entrance to, I can't remember if it's an Aldi or a Lidl supermarket there. So let's watch. Huzzah. So obviously cyclists in that cycle lane should be given right of way because drivers should not be turning left when there's cyclists coming. I always feel like I should have like the casualty theme tune. That's the first cyclist. Another cyclist comes in through. Now, we know, I think even before the changes to the highway code, that driver would still have been responsible, criminally responsible, yeah, and civil responsible negligence. Strangely, that's still, the driver's still insisting that she is not to blame, they are not to blame, for the incident, despite the highway code being pointed out to them. So it's not only somebody that it wasn't aware of the highway code, you still point out the highway code, not to blame. The cyclist shouldn't come past. So again, what can the cyclist do? The cyclist was not to blame here. And I'm not assigning blame to that cyclist, but it is something to be aware of, that these are danger points that we see. And if you can avoid putting yourself in that situation, because you're not going to win that fight. So as I say, I can use that highway code to get you compensation. The driver was certainly to blame here, but doesn't help it actually happening to start off with. So 5 things I'd never do as a personal injury solicitor. Filtering. Now, this is a difficult one because I'm a bit of a countryside cyclist, and I know I'm probably speaking to city cyclists here. And I know one of the amazing things about being able to ride a bicycle is that you can jump a lot of queues, you can filter, you can make progress faster in a city because of filtering, and it's legal. The highway code also says the driver should be looking out for cyclists and motorcyclists who may be filtering. But in reality, we know, or I know from the cases that come to me, that it is a very dangerous position to be in for lots of reasons. Partly because if you're filtering, there might be cars coming out from a junction to your left, coming through traffic. There might be cars turning into junctions. There might, if you're filtering perhaps on the right, a car might decide they're fed up of sitting in that traffic jam and hang a U-turn, not bothering to look. All sorts of things. I know it's a situation that clients come to me regularly having suffered an incident. The other horrible one with filtering is dooring accidents. And just like PC Sinclair said, these dooring accidents are horrible. They often result in facial and head injuries, and it's one of the really difficult cases that we deal with. So here's some footage, and this one has been taken from a client's helmet cam. Filtering, easy, and dooring. That cyclist is perfectly entitled to filter. I suppose in some respects, you can normally trust your driver's not going to get out the car, hopefully. Near schools, where there's traffic jams, we often see school kids are just jumping out cars quickly. So maybe try and be aware, as aware you can, of the circumstances of where you are. Taxis, people are jumping out of taxis, delivery vans, doors. I often look for if there's wing mirrors folded in, I'm pretty confident that that car's locked and empty. So if there's, you know, if you're coming, but and sometimes you can check in the wing mirrors, you can see if there's a driver there. Because you might think, well, if they're there, especially if they've got brake lights on or the lights have just gone on, off, maybe they've just stopped or just. So it's one of the difficult ones. I choose not to filter. I will just sit in traffic. My husband filters all the time. It gives me the fear. So, it's not. Yep. As a on the right hand side as a motor.
That case there, looks like to be illegal because the undertaking is out of the site.
Yeah, I mean the first. There wouldn't be space for a motorcycle to do that. I suppose the cyclists have always traditionally been shoved into the gutters. So like when I did my cycling proficiency as a child, you're always told to ride just as far out. So cyclists have always been shoved into the side of the road. I think there's actually a bus lane there. So that was a bus lane with cars parked. Cyclist is allowed to cycle in the bus lane. So they are allowed to filter there in a situation where perhaps a motorcyclist can, but filtering is legal for motorcyclists. For motorcyclists, we often see very similar types of incidents as well, especially if they're overtaken and a car turns right. And those are very difficult instances as well. It's a situation where cyclists and motorcyclists are putting themselves in danger. And I would just ask you to be careful and make choices about that. As I say, I'm not trying to preach to any of you about this. These are just my decisions, my personal decisions about how I ride a bike as a result of what I see. Yeah. 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 And you've got to get there to get, yeah. It's a difficult one. I can think of one of those near where I live, that I want to get to the front to that advanced cycle lane, advanced stop lane. But I can only do that by filtering. Personally, I choose not to. My husband will go up ahead of me. If we're coming back from a bike ride, he'll go up ahead and filter up and sit in there. And I'm like, fine, you can put the lunch on when we get back in. But so we're quite often separated. But that's my lived experience. Having clients come to me with, as I say, very bad days on the bike that I choose not to. Perhaps I have a bit of anxiety. Yeah. Yeah. So if I was very sure that all traffic was stopped and I didn't think that the lights were going to turn quickly and I didn't think it was likely that people are going to get out there, then I might consider it. Everything's a dynamic risk assessment. We're doing this day in, day out as a cyclist. It's non-stop. You're assessing everything all at once. These are just factors I think about. And I hope maybe you'll all give them a bit of thought, because I don't want you to call me. Please don't. I'm really busy and it's not good. I mean, I say this, people give what I do as a personal injury solicitor and it gets a bad rep. So like, oh, ambulance chasers. But these people are my friends and my family. And yeah, it's difficult. Yeah. That's actually the driver. Yeah. Yeah, so the driver is actually responsible to make sure that doors are not opened. So it's the unusual one is when it's taxis and it's drunk people getting. That's why your taxi driver locks you in, also so you don't bump your fare. But so but it's the driver that's responsible for the vehicle. 5 things I'd never do as a personal injury solicitor. Never trust a puddle. Puddles are potholes. Every puddle's a pothole. So puddles, you know, when there's a puddle, that water gathers there. When water gathers there, it goes through the freeze-thaw cycle as we're experiencing tonight. So you know that it could easily be a puddle, a pothole underneath a puddle. And obviously, if it's submerged with water, you can't necessarily see how deep it is. And whilst some potholes are just uncomfortable to go over, some can be like truly dangerous, and you'll often front wheel in, over the handlebars, head injuries, face injuries, and that's exactly what happened here with one of my clients. And this was fully submerged in water when he had his accident. He was actually found unconscious by the people from the local SSPCA. The council in this one actually knew about this pothole, and they'd gone out to see it like every 4 months and take a photograph of it and log it. And they'd actually had in their notes that it would cost about £10. It was no, not about 10. It would cost £10 to fix this pothole, and they just never did. Despite the fact that there'd been a number of reports of cyclists saying there's a dangerous pothole, and there had also been a report from a chap anonymously, but we actually managed to track him down with broken arm on this very pothole. Council did nothing. £10 pothole fix, nothing. So never trust a pothole. If you can safely avoid puddles, try to do so. Obviously, again, dynamic risk assessment with what you can do around you. And if there's traffic, maybe you're deciding the puddle's a better evil. If you can safely avoid puddles, try and do so. Here is a video. So this is a client who's riding in the dark. He's got a really bright light on. You know what's coming, don't you? And that was actually a burst water main the Scottish Water knew about that had destroyed the road surface, and they hadn't done anything about it. They hadn't even put a cone out or something. Nope. I can do them for compensation, but there isn't such a thing. So compensation is based on reparation, so trying to put you back into the situation that you should have been in. There is nothing like punitive damages or corporate negligence that there is in the States that you might hear of as punishment for what they've done wrong. We've had accidents that have been life-changing with potholes, life-changing. And again, somebody will get money to put them back in, but it's never enough. It's never something you'd want to go through again. The UK, there is compensation, and if you work a case well, you can get good compensation, but it's not a win. There's no winning here. So no, there isn't. No. So again, there's no precisely, yeah, precisely. Yep. So each local authority and roads authority, if it's trunk road, will have their own policy, and they'll have various different categorizations of a defect. So often it's done again as a dynamic risk assessment or as a risk matrix of how likely it is to be and how serious the injury, how serious a consequence could come from it. And that will give a categorization that should lead to response time under their policy. So under their policies, it should set out when they should repair it. So the good thing to do is if you have a familiar pothole that you see in your regular routes, please report it. Even if you know to avoid it, it's the person that doesn't know about it that hits that pothole. If you've reported it, that gives me really good evidence when I'm doing a freedom of information request to say, the council knew about this. They knew about it because this person has chosen, taking 5 minutes out to report it. Most local authorities have got online portals to report, and it's really easy to do so. So if you're aware of it. So no, it depends is the honest. It is. Their policy has to be reasonable, and they're all much a muchness. So there's not any massive deviations between them. Otherwise, there would be the potential for criticism that their policy was unreasonable. So local authorities and roads authorities are obligated to do what is reasonable to maintain and inspect their roads. Yep. Oh. What does it? Very good. Yeah, so stuff like that. There's some apps. There's ones. I have to make sure I get this. I think it's fillthathole.com and not .co.uk, which is a totally different website. I think it's .com or maybe it's .co.uk. Anyway, so there's one called Fill That Hole. Make sure you get the right one. And you can report it on there. And that again, I think that's UK wide as well. So that's probably a safer bet. I should maybe recommend that one. Yeah, yeah.
Generally, we'll specifically tell them it's all safety.
Yeah, so most of the Cat 1 potholes, depending on the roads authority, but normally it's make immediately safe, and that whether that's stick a cone or something, and then make safe within 24 hours, and then it goes all the way down to like category 4, which is like about round to it. So, and like I say, that pothole that I showed you just before was deemed a category 4, despite the fact it had already taken out 2 cyclists that the council were aware of, and 4 that we managed to dig up. So 5 things I'd never do as a personal injury solicitor. Trusts that I have been seen. So this is an accident I dealt with broad daylight. It's up in Bankery in Aberdeenshire. It's an area that I cycle in all the time. It's a straight bit of road. There's 2 cyclists here. Here we go. Broad daylight, there to be seen. We put this up in our socials afterwards. Liability was admitted straight away by the driver. They agreed that they were entirely to blame. We got compensation for our client. He got surgery that he needed. He fractured a clavicle. So all good, but again, we'd rather it didn't happen to start off with. We put this up on our socials afterwards, this video, and you wouldn't believe the amount of criticism that they got for being in black. It's broad daylight. We allow black cars on the road. I choose not to wear black. I think it looks really cool. I think it looks Euro. I choose not to, because of this. I don't choose to wear fluorescents. I'll tend to wear something bright and visible, just to do my best. But again, broad daylight, straight road, there's no reason why they couldn't be seen. There's 2 of them as well. So okay, if they can't be seen in black, what about full on yellow helmet, flashing light, broad daylight? Okay, it's a bit dim and miserable. I mean, he's pretty visible there. His positioning was, again, you can cycle right round the left-hand side. I'm not always sure that that's the best idea. I tend to cycle like I would drive. Again, that's not advice. It's just that's how I choose to do it, because I think drivers know more what to expect if you're going right in the lane that they expect to go right in. But anyways, he's right in the middle of the roundabout. It's not a large roundabout. He's there to be seen. He could be seen coming onto the roundabout. It's difficult when clients tell me I don't know what else I could have done, and sometimes I just don't know the answer. This is another one. Again, it's darkness, but my client's again full yellow, flashing everything. He's like a Christmas tree. Checking behind him, can see this car coming out to his left. Car's there. She was distracted because her children were shouting in the background. So you can never trust that you've been seen. You can sometimes do everything right. And although drivers are obligated to give way to you, as I said before, the highway code does not give you right of way. It tells you when other people should give you right of way. Yeah, you're not going to win that fight. If you can, do all you can to anticipate that every driver's an idiot. So just anticipate that you've not been seen. Last one, riding without a helmet. Now, this is controversial, and I know Cycling Scotland, Cycling UK have got views on whether you should be wearing a helmet, whether you ought to be wearing a helmet, whether there should be laws on helmet. And I'm a big libertarian. I don't think that the law should be telling adults what to do. I have views about children. I do think children should be wearing helmets. But I think adults, it's your head. You can do what you want with it. So a lot of the arguments are is maybe forcing people to wear helmets discourages cycling when it shouldn't inherently be a dangerous sport or activity, and it shouldn't be. But again, if you did my job, you know it's not entirely safe either. And maybe the helmet debate distracts from the real causes of cycling danger, such as poor infrastructure, and maybe the helmet debate puts the burden of safety on the vulnerable road user, and maybe it puts it down to the last fail safe. If everything goes wrong, but he's got a helmet on, it'll be fine. Maybe it increases risk by encouraging people to take risks that they wouldn't otherwise do if they weren't wearing a helmet, or encouraging road users to take risks around cyclists if they're protected by a helmet. Maybe. But if you'd seen what I'd seen and the cases that I deal with, and often it's cyclists that tell me they always wear a helmet, but that's the ones that really get me. And it's this, I had a case for a cybersecurity expert. He always wears a helmet, but he'd taken out the pads to wash them and they were still a bit wet, and he was only going half a mile down the road. It's the young lady doctor. She always wears a helmet, but she'd actually loaned her helmet to her friend that was going mountain biking, and she felt like her friend needed the helmet more. And she was only going to work, and she was only going to be crossing one road, and the rest was off road anyway. It was fine. So it's those circumstances when people that always wear a helmet can be involved in accidents, and it might be accidents that wouldn't have been life-changing if they had been wearing. It might have just been a bad bump. Nasty concussion, it wouldn't necessarily have been life-changing if it hadn't been for an accident. So as I say, nobody expects the worst to happen on their ride, especially if it's somewhere that you feel safe. If you're just nipping to the shops, or if you're going to get a jar of mayonnaise, you don't necessarily think it's extreme mayonnaise fetching that you're going to do. It's when you feel safe is unfortunately when the worst that can happen. As my husband, who went through the back of a window just a few months ago, half a mile from the house, a girl had reversed out of her driveway right in front of him. So it's my choice. And again, if you'd seen what I'd seen, to wear a helmet every time. This is the gore warning. So if you don't want gore, we've got 5 seconds of gore, and then I'll put it away. So just nipping along. So insurers' excuses, this is what we see all the time from the other side. The cyclist came out of nowhere, poof, appears. The cyclist pulled off the pavement in front of me. That we do see that happen. The cyclist was riding too fast. The cyclist was riding too slow. It was low sun and I couldn't see, so I just turned. I just did it. The cyclist went through a red light, so I just hit them. Cyclist wasn't wearing a helmet, so they break their leg. And the cyclist should have braked, so I'll just pull out in front of them. Yep.
Can I ask if you ever represented the pedestrian
I have.
who has been knocked?
By a cyclist, no.
No, sorry.
Oh.
By David Speak.
Yep.
Has that pedestrian ever been accused of not wearing a helmet?
Yep. You're quite right. The law.
Surely. Realistic penalties on multi
Mm.
because multi feels and nobody tells them to wear a helmet.
Yep.
And I have asked and asked at different meetings, how many multi private passengers die through head injury?
Mm.
Because perhaps if they started wearing helmet, they might escape death in these awful, not accidents, but collisions.
Yep. Yep. Like I say, everyone comes to me after the bad thing happens. So I get the cases after that awful thing has happened. And although a cycling helmet's not going to prevent an accident happening, it can lessen your injuries when that does happen.
So it could, if you're walking down the street, walking to get in the car, that's my hypothesis. And all those excuses, they are picture. Certainly. That these aren't accidents. That they are called because.
Is this my time? They're like, just cut her off. So I don't think helmets prevent accidents happening, but I think that the evidence that I see is that certainly they can lessen the injuries. And obviously, if it's a severe traumatic collision, then there's certain incidents that helmets are not going to prevent a head injury. But it's the innocuous ones where it might have otherwise just been a little bump. It's a week out your life, you've got a small concussion. It changes that to being a life-changing injury. And that's the ones I say that I choose always to wear a helmet, and I would choose not to cycle if I didn't have access to a helmet.
To wear a helmet to the
I don't, no.
Why not?
Sorry, just an entrance out of the one giver with a voice, but just we have slightly fit into a break. It was this.
Yeah.
I want to give you guys a break as well. So in the interest of time, that's what you were all on.
Yep.
I don't
So-
do want to give everyone a voice, but
We do have some time for questions afterwards as well for the whole panel. So, Kit Kat. No, so I am a civil lawyer only. So I deal with negligence cases pursuing compensation. So I've only ever represented injured people. I only represent cyclists now with the work I do. So for prosecuting cyclists, or sorry. So it's pretty rare. Like I know that we've heard from PC Sinclair that there are criminal there's offences that cyclists could be guilty of. I'm not actually aware of anyone that's been. I mean, to be fair, they might not be the type of people that's come to me. But is it common, or it's not common? Yeah, has happened. But it's not something that I've heard commonly. We have criminal defence solicitors that we can refer people to, but I've never once been asked to do it. So, have you got something you need to? Oh, thank you. Okay. Yeah.
What do you want to do, right? Even if I just speak up to get, back in ambulance, you want to do, I've got both. I mean, maybe I can do it and go into something for something.
Yeah.
So therefore, the same, and it's all like, and then know your actual process.
Yeah.
You're doing it. But the whole point was that they be looked after me. I just.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it. A lot of our clients phone us up and say, oh, I don't know whether I'm lucky or unlucky. And it's a bit of both sometimes, I think, because, obviously lucky that they're able to phone me and ask for help. But yeah, unlucky that something bad has happened. Right, I think I'm going to hand back over and then.
okay, just quickly, just before I let you loose on the coffee and biscuit station, you might see some posters kind of dotted around this evening, just for SAMH. Now, this is kind of all in, obviously it's all cycling related, but we are in aid of SAMH. So when you bought your ticket, you would have donated, I think, £1. Now this is all going to SAMH, so the Scottish Action for Mental Health. Now, SAMH provide mental health support for everyone. They have a drop-in centre, and it's in Glasgow where you can go if you're struggling for your mental health. You can go. You can just get help. You don't need an appointment. You don't need anything. You can just turn up and you can get help. Now they are wanting to make this kind of all around Scotland, and they're hoping to open up centres in Aberdeen, Dundee, Edinburgh. But obviously they need your help and the public help to make this a possibility. So if you can give anything this evening to SAMH, that would be very much appreciated. But I'll not take. We'll touch back on this later on, but I'll not take too much more of your breakup. So if you want to head out, there's a coffee station just out these doors, just on the left-hand side. Okay, thank you. Okay, folks. Thank you very much for your patience there. There's just a wee minor thing we had to deal with. So just sort of moving on to the next sort of part of my story. Obviously, I told you about this mad dream that I had going to the Paralympics when I was in the hospital. Well, in 2022, the Beijing Paralympics, that dream came true. Not without its challenges, should I say. So the way the kind of Olympics and Paralympics works is obviously there's a 4-year cycle. So every 4 years, there's another Paralympics, winter and obviously summer. So for when I got my leg amputated, it was just after the Pyeongchang Winter Paralympics. So for me, I was fresh in at the start of the first year of the cycle. Now, within the years leading up to the Paralympics, you have to accrue points, which kind of gets you a slot. Now, for me, the year before the games, I had qualified my slot, but I hadn't qualified my place. So in the kind of winter leading up to the Paralympics, I was out training, working hard as I always do. I was on my push bike. Now I was coming down a hill, and there was a car coming up a hill. Now the woman didn't see me coming down the hill, went to turn into a junction, and I went straight into the front quarter of her car, basically with my face. Now I broke my nose, ruptured my tricep tendon, which is pretty essential for me skiing because it's all arms. Now, this being kind of 6 months out from the Paralympics, I thought my Paralympic dream was over. But I went through some really intensive rehab, managed to kind of rehab myself to death and get my arm working again. And ultimately that led me to the Paralympics and realising my dream. Now, I had a bit of a mixed bag of results at the Paralympics because I had that serious injury beforehand. So I didn't really feel like I got a full crack at the games. That being said, the Paralympics and the games, as I refer to, it was incredible, the experience of a lifetime, and I absolutely loved every second of it and made the most of every second of it because I'd worked so hard to get there. Now, after the Paralympics, we as a team collectively unfortunately lost all our funding, which for me meant that I could no longer ski because it was going to cost me about 60 grand a year to ski. And for me, that's just not possible. So I decided to move over to cycling because my passion for training and competing was still as hungry as ever. But obviously I just couldn't afford to do it skiing, so I thought I'd go to cycling. That's going to be much cheaper, which was a pretty rude awakening. But again, I'll park that there and we'll come back to it in a wee bit. Now, our next speaker, my ride, our right, is going to be from Scott Runciman, which I hope I've pronounced it correctly again, from Cycling UK. Scott, take it away.
First challenge here. There we go. Hi everyone. Does that sound okay? Can you hear me? Cool. I'm Scott Runciman. I'm the Scotland Advocacy Lead for Cycling UK. For those of you who don't know, Cycling UK are a membership charity. We also deliver behaviour change projects throughout Scotland. And we're also a campaigning organisation dating back to 1876, I think. I'm here to So I'm here to tell you about our recent My Ride Our Right campaign. Essentially, it's a women's road safety campaign, but with a bit of a slight difference. And I'll tell you hopefully about the campaign, about the thinking behind the campaign, how we kind of got to it, some of our recent campaign actions and events, what we're asking for, what's next, and how you can get involved. So, firstly, I've got a quick video to show you, which was taken ahead of the campaign and kind of reflects the need that we're trying to address. We know that women want to cycle, but often they can't or they aren't doing so. And it's important to stress that this campaign has been informed and kind of led by women's experiences and real life experiences from the start. I'm just going to quickly show you the video. So we know women want to cycle, and that's why we're running this campaign. There's so many good reasons to do so, as we could have heard from the testimony, but it's not as easy as it can be. And this was kind of started us on the journey of creating this campaign. We wanted a campaign this is our main campaign video, which we launched just in April. So quickly show you this. So with the campaign, we were trying to create something that is emotive and strong and powerful, and kind of taps into the testimonies that we saw before, but also inspires people to go out and want to ride bikes, because this is all about, and women especially. Again, that video was made by women on our campaigns team and in our team. So My Ride Our Right is a campaign which is is about empowering women to ride their bikes, but it's also trying to acknowledge the issues that women face when riding their bikes. From the early kind of campaign research, we found that the main barrier for women and the main barrier for everyone to riding a bike is often fear, and also the perception of safety. So we're trying to kind of tap into that throughout the campaign. We get the question why we're focused on women. Well, at the moment, there's in Scotland and the UK, half as many women cycle regularly as compared to men. And in countries with higher cycle participation rates, so like the Netherlands, Denmark, that's equal, or often there's more women are cycling more than men. Women are cycling more than men. And we also know that there's a tendency for cycling to become safer for everyone if there's more people cycling. So hopefully this is a way of making that happen. Earlier in the year, we commissioned some YouGov polling, which followed up some 2018 polling we did. And it was looking at perceptions of safety and barriers to cycling. And again, the main barrier to cycling is fear of their safety. And during that time, the perception for men has remained constant or improved, but it's gotten worse for women. So for men, cycling has gotten easier ostensibly, but for women it's gotten worse. And the YouGov polling, it polled across a whole range of different things on the roads. It wasn't just pure fear. It was fear of sharing the roads with large vehicles. It was fear of being overtaken too closely, fear of having to negotiate busy junctions and roundabouts, and also depressingly, fear of encountering abusive behaviour on the roads. So when you start thinking about that, the first stat there, that half as many women are cycling regularly as compared to men, you get into this vicious cycle where there's half as many women are able to access the benefits of cycling, that it's good for their physical and mental health, it's good for their economy, there's also it's fun, like the intangible benefits of cycling that we all experience, that with the current gender imbalance, women aren't going to be able to access that. And then there's a further kind of compounding effect where in Scotland and the UK, women are still required or often do more domestic labour, childcare. They often are required to do more journeys as a result. And they do trip chaining, so they'll connect these journeys together. And they're therefore less likely to be able to do that by bike. So it is a really vicious cycle. Further kind of unfairness is that we know, not to diminish or kind of downplay some of the risks we've heard earlier, but we know that cycling is essentially safe. Most people here are able to ride a bike without an incident. It's the environment around them that's going to probably cause them to have an issue. And the issue that this campaign is really driving at is that sensation of unsafety. And there's a big distinction between actual lived safety and the perception of safety, and it was really important in this campaign that we don't make cycling kind of feel unsafe and kind of further discourage people from riding their bikes, because that obviously is not the point. That's 58% of women feel limited by safety concerns. That's coming from that polling this year. Another thing that has come up in reference to people's environments and built environment is the kind of choices that women and cyclists have to make. Again, it's kind of amplified if you're a woman. There's maybe an underpass or a cycle lane with just a painted strip of painted line, which doesn't really offer you any protection. There are choices that men might make readily, but for women, that both choices are basically feel horrible, and they feel horrible for men as well. I think historically, there's another thing which came up through our research is that highway engineering and transport, and it's kind of something we know is it's been a male-dominated sector. Our town centres and cities are, if there are existing cycle lanes, they tend to reflect kind of more old school journeys that are straight lines. They're pretty thin paths. They're there for one single bike. They're not necessarily there for a family or adaptive cycles. and they don't reflect the kind of those trip chaining zigzag patterns that that women and families want to make. We are seeing this change, and you'll hear from Malcolm and Eric in a sec about the amazing designs that they're implementing. But we need more of them. We need more cycle paths that have got network connectivity, that are kind of place making, that feel part of a place and are not just a strip of paint at the side of the road. And again, I just want to really stress that while this campaign is about women, if we make cycling safer for women, we make cycling safer for everyone. And that, again, is really the point. So what are we asking for during the campaign, or as part of the campaign? From governments, for all 4 governments across the UK, we're looking for more investment in active travel. So we're hoping that governments are going to reach that 10% of the transport budget being spent on active travel, so walking and cycling routes. We're looking for multi-year funding agreements for councils so that they can start planning properly, be it behaviour change projects or the key infrastructure routes that really work and we all love. We're also calling on the UK government to put more effort into communicating the highway code, which we've already heard desperately needs done. We need to properly embed how the transport hierarchy of users. We've had really good pickup on the campaign, and as a result, because this is an election year in Scotland and Wales, we're trying to interweave our Scottish manifesto into the campaign, so they're kind of mutually beneficial, I guess. So some of the calls we're making for during the campaign will be part of our manifesto. So we're calling for more investment in active travel, which is on everyone's bingo card. We're calling for safer routes for everyone, more children cycling, which that came up as a result of engaging with things like bike buses and play streets at the start of the campaign. We're also calling for paths to green space for better health and greater transport choice and connectivity for all. And they're all kind of, they're not mutually exclusive. Obviously, they feed into this campaign. From local authorities and councils, we're asking for more high quality cycle routes and networks, which again is pretty obvious, but some local authorities really have a proper willingness. Edinburgh, Glasgow have got amazing projects going on, but it's not the same situation across the country. We'd love to see more inclusive community engagement in the design of these routes and in the design process. So making sure that women's voices are heard and kind of brought into the early phases of design. And we're also looking for lower cost changes and interventions in our streets and roads. So things like improved lighting, accessible cycle parking that's well visible, junction narrowing. All these things really benefit women, but they're going to benefit everyone. And then for local advocates who want to get involved or want to strengthen their voice, we run the Cycle Advocacy Network across the UK. It's a knowledge sharing platform where there's individual reps, there's representatives of groups. We've got campaigns ranging from tiny wee path campaigns that are kind of 200 meters all the way up to national campaigns like Pedal in Parliament, and we work to support them with their campaigns, and it can be anything from trying to work with a local shop to put in some safe cycle parking, or maybe working on the detail to present to local authorities. We'll support those campaigners with surgery sessions, webinars. We've got kind of bespoke inboxes where you can speak to our team, our policy team, our campaigns team. It's all totally free, assuming you're a Cycling UK member, but it's a really good way to get involved and kind of strengthen your voice. And something, if you're interested, please do speak to me at the end of the presentation tonight. So how are we making this happen? We've had some good early successes as part of the campaign. So we've been really successful in speaking to all parties across Scottish Parliament. So we've had feedback from all parties and from all MSPs and good engagement as part of the campaign. we're really successful with our campaign video, and it allowed us to, it drew a lot of attention to the campaign early on, more than other projects we've run that are maybe similar. And we've also had, as I think possibly as a result of the campaign video, we had a really good pickup of our letter writing campaign. So there's a little gizmo on the website where you're able to put in your postcode, your email address, and it'll write you a bespoke email, and you can send it off to your representative. And it's definitely worth doing. What's next? So we're in the process of creating a kind of good low-cost intervention Bible, or a kind of report that will be published. It's going to be, or it has been rather, it's been crowdsourced from users' experiences. So people have been able to geotag and take a photo of good bits of high quality infrastructure and low cost bits of infrastructure. And once we publish that, you'll be able to take it to your councils and harangue councillors and officers, and Malcolm and Eric will probably hate me, but it will be a really good resource for people to use. The glow rides, I'm going to tell you about a little bit more about that in just a second. And I've mentioned that it's an election year in Scotland and Wales. We're trying to tie the election into this campaign, or manifesto into this campaign. And we're now in the process of contacting all parties with our manifesto. We are trying to get meetings. We'll be hosting some hustings, hopefully, in the new year. And we've got a Hollywood event as well for the first time in the new year. So we could tell you quickly, so the glow rides have been a complete, a bit of a masterstroke and an unexpected success for us. There was 8 in Scotland. There's 67 across the UK. We helped organise these with kind of, I think it was about 2 months to spare, and we thought we might get 20 or so. And it just grew exponentially. I think it's tapped into something that was maybe already there. There's a lot of groups go out and do kind of reclaim the night rides. And we weren't trying to copy them or mimic them, but we were looking for groups to go out at the end of October when the light was fading, and show their support to the campaign. And we kind of knocked it out of the park. We had 8 in Scotland. I went up to the one in Kinross, which was actually their biggest ride they'd ever had. It was in the dark and it was freezing, but it still managed to be the biggest ride they'd ever had. There was trishaws, they had cargo bikes, everyone was totally bedecked in fluorescent colours. We had prizes available for the best dressed and most outrageous bike. And while I was up in Kinross, I received an email from one of the ladies who was taking part in the ride, and I thought I'd read that out because it's a really good testimony of what this campaign's about. So I feel I'm a good example of cycling for health. I only took up cycling in 2018 due to a neurological condition, Parkinson's. And I truly believe that cycling has not only helped slow down the progression, but helped save me from effects of another occasion where I've experienced prolonged trauma. I do not exaggerate when I say it literally saved my life. It's given me freedom, independence, and enabled me to go on several adventures. As we're now a one-car family, it's my main mode of transport, but some of the incidents, risks I come across are perhaps not for the faint-hearted. If you ask most women about cycling, the same fears arise: lack of safe routes, the highway code is not being robust enough, the use of should and must is unhelpful to deter dangerous, aggressive driving, and the knock-on effect of how society views cyclists isn't helpful. Police and local authorities have not followed up with reported incidents or shrugged them off as insignificant, based on my own experience. Also, simple changes would help cyclists, like signage if a road's closed, or traffic lights at roadworks to make sure safe passage for cyclists. So in a nutshell, cycling is not high enough priority for me, and in a society that believes we're a nuisance and way down the pecking order, it's not right. Sorry for having a wee bit of a rant. So in that email, she's kind of really succinctly showing the benefits of cycling, the barriers to cycling, and also this aspect of bravery that women and a lot of us have. And I think that's what this campaign is hopefully trying to tap into, is the fact that we needn't necessarily have to always feel brave to just go out and ride a bike. And I think as a result, if that were the case, more women and more people generally would be riding bikes. the responses of the so far, so there's some questionable numbers on here. We've had over 500 news articles. We've had 5.4 billion impressions, apparently, or my comms and media team tell me, but apparently that's a reliable number. We've had a load of website traffic. We've had extra cycle advocacy networks, reps and groups joining, and groups and reps who are women as well, which is really important. And we've had loads of social media buzz. I love social media. And as we have been successful with this campaign, we're going to continue to keep it running into at least May. So there's still loads of opportunities for you all to get involved. You can write to politicians using the website. Please share the good infrastructure guide when it comes out. If you'd like to become part of the Cycle Advocacy Network, then I'd love to chat to you. I've got some takeaway bits you can take. We'll have hustings manifesto, and hopefully we can all just get more people riding bikes. Cheers.
Well, I didn't need to come and hound you for time, did I?
Yeah, it was ominous last time.
Yeah. So, Scotland's the one. Thank you. So a little bit about beyond for me. Obviously after, like I told you about the Paralympics and stuff, my desire for sport was still very much there, and I wanted a new challenge. I wanted to just see what I could do, and also I wanted to go to the Paralympics. It's a work in progress. Let's just put it that way. It's been incredibly difficult. Learning to ride a bike with one leg's pretty tough. The hills are pretty brutal. Yeah, it adds a bit of challenge, a bit of spice, especially when you stop at traffic lights. So as you can see on this screen, I don't know where the pointer is, but I ride with what I call a stump bucket. My prosthetist hates that. But I basically have an attachment to the seat post on the bike. Now, this just basically gives me a platform to push and drive from. Otherwise, I'm very imbalanced, and I just have nothing to push against. So this just gives me a platform to really drive. Now, I ride road time trial, road race, so the bunch, and then obviously track as well. So that would be timed events or bunch as well. If any of you know about Glasgow Track League, I will be there on Friday if you want to come and have a look. Might not be pretty, but we'll get there. And also from my accent, I've always tried to say yes to things and be a lot more kind of open to new things and new ideas. And obviously my background as a chef, I got approached by a producer for Next Level Chef. This is a Gordon Ramsay cooking program. So I basically went for a week's punishment with Gordon Ramsay in this cooking competition. I managed to I was runner-up basically in the competition. So so if you fancy a laugh, a one-legged guy hobbling about a kitchen, it's on SDV Player if you want to have a look. Now, moving on to our next. So basically all it is I'm not attached to the bike as such. It's easier for me to get out of the bike than it would be to unclip my pedal. All my stump bucket does is literally just, it's like an egg cup basically. That my leg literally just slots in and it just gives me a platform to drive off of. So I'm in no way attached to the bike. Part of the rules for UCI and adaptations for bikes, you can't be affixed to the bike. So if you have a crash, you have to be able to kind of quickly get away from the bike, or just for safety purposes. So moving on, we have Cycle Safety Roadshow. So we have Eric Hill from Sweco UK and Malcolm Hall from Glasgow City Council.
Which is film.
Excuse us for a moment. Super. Can you hear me at the back okay? Yep. Everybody's happy. And the controller. We're on. Right, thanks so much, Callum. Quick introduction, that's me. And what I'm going to tell you a bit about is I work for a consultancy called Sweco, which is a Swedish company. Guess that from the name, it's quite obvious. It's a multidisciplinary consultancy, so we're based all over Europe, and we've got offices here in Glasgow and one in Edinburgh, and I'm based in Edinburgh. My job in Sweco is road safety engineering, and it's kind of different from what we might call normal standard types of engineering, and I'll come to that in a moment. The work we do is we do a lot of collision investigation work. We do a lot of work looking at road safety engineering, how to engineer out problems from roads, how to audit roads that are being designed and built, as Stuart had mentioned earlier. And we do a physical safety risk assessment when, as Malcolm's going to mention, is that sometimes we can't do exactly what we want to do, but we've got to try and pick the best of the rest to minimise the risks. And I've been doing this for about 30 years. And in that same time, I was 21 years as a special constable with Police Scotland. And Tayside Police, I was a cycle patrol officer on community side in Kinross. If anybody here had been at tea in the park and seen cops on bikes, that was us. But latterly, last half of my time with Police Scotland, I was with traffic. And that's a bit more serious because instead of being the fun guy on the bike, we were tending to be looking at things where things that happened with bikes and had gone wrong. And that's helped me in my professional life because it gives me a better understanding about what's going on the roads and how we can engineer things out because I see it firsthand. I'm a past chair of Society of Road Safety Auditors, and I'm going to mention a colleague that's sitting here, Richard. He is a current Scottish representative for the Society of Road Safety Auditors, and he'll be happy to take your questions later. But I feel like Billy Connolly when he talks about it's like singing in front of your aunties, you know, but somebody keeping an eye on what I say. Right. Getting away from all the ivory tower stuff, right? I'm like everybody else here, right? I'm a fifer, and we all say we're all Jock Thompson's bairns, right? We're all human. We've all got these connections. And that's a really important thing. It's an important thing in my life because of what I do. Because I realise that, you know, we're dealing with human beings and we're all connected. And there's big ripples that happen as a effect of what we do. And if we look at these ripples and we think, well, what's happened on the road? And this is where we're missing out a presentation because somebody who was speaking on Monday night covered this beautifully for me, and I could just skip by it. But just this section here, this is from Crash Map. You can go online and you can look at this, and you can show you all the crashes where they're happening for previous years. And there we go. That's in, I think it was 2023. I've got 2025, that's wrong. 2023. There was 3 fatal collisions where cyclists passed away. We're looking on that map about 4 million people there, maybe, population-wise. It doesn't sound much, does it? But then there's a person, and it's their family, and it's their friends, and it's their colleagues, their work colleagues, and all ripples go out. And that's the important thing. And then we start looking at a seriously injured collision person. A serious injury in many cases is life-changing. And then we have Ross talking about, you know, what happens, the support you have to get, the compensations, changing your life. So it's massive, right? And one person being hurt on the road is one too many. You know, we never sit there thinking that, oh, great, we've got the numbers down, we're happy with it. No, we've got to get down to 0. I'll probably never see it in my lifetime, but we have to aspire to get the figures down. So I mentioned what I did and how it's different from engineering. And this is an analogy I use to talk about engineering. And if we've got any engineers here, who'll be hating me in a minute, right? But if we talk about something like structural engineering, and you've got a building, it's like a bowl of fruit. Because when we sit in here, we can identify there's a column there. I know exactly what it does. I know what loads it should be able to carry and how it's going to behave when things go different. It's got a roof slab. So like the bowl of fruit, I can pick out all these little bits and I can see how they all work. Right, and that's great, right? Mechanical engineering, structural engineering, things like that, quite good. When we come to what I do, and we talk about road safety engineering, we still have main features. I love this monitor keeps going away. It's fantastic. We'll have these features that we can still pull out of what's happening, the environment around about us, maybe the weather conditions, the vehicles involved. But we've got a slushy there, and that's kind of like us, that's humans, because we've essentially got all the same ingredients, but they're all kind of mixed up and they all react differently with each other. And if I look around here, we're going to have people who are very competent cyclists, and some of you is maybe less competent. Some years are great on certain types of roads, some years on others. And that's like slush, it's all in there. So I can't sit as a designer and go, a cyclist. Because it's a massive mixture. In the same way as a driver, you get good drivers having bad days. You have drivers that are taking medicines that they shouldn't be taking when they're driving, which affects their abilities, right? So my branch of engineering is possibly more like psychology because we're looking at the person in the vehicle, the person who's a pedestrian, the cyclist, everything, and how they all interact. So I'm going to show you some of the things that give me the fear before I pass on to Malcolm to decide. He's going to explain how we design things. Cycle lanes. So I think this is in Halifax. If you enjoy cycling up hills, go down to Halifax. It's busy road, this, heavy goods vehicles, and they've got cycle lanes. And this type of thing happened a lot back in the millennium. Remember when the end of the world was coming at midnight and, you know, planes were going to fall out of the sky and everything. The government did a millennium cycleway thing and they threw money to local authorities and went, build lots of cycle facilities for the millennium, but do it before March. Right? And this has been touched on already by Scott. Okay. So what did they do? They went, there's a wide road. I can put a white line down the side of it and that makes it great and the cyclists will love us. Well, won't worry about the big roundabout, but you know, that's great. But even this, we talk about the campaign for giving 1.5 meters. A cyclist is going to be cycling more or less on the edge of that white line in the edge yards. Are people going to give them 1.5 meters? Because let's go back to the psychology of drivers. This is my lane, that's somebody else's lane. I'm not going to move away from them, right? So, yeah, don't like these things. I don't really think they're good safe-wise. Then we have barriers, pedestrian barriers in particular at junctions. We know that we'll have instances where cyclists will be turning left and a large vehicle. If you've been to London, you'll see it, the tippers going in and out of towns, turning left. There's nowhere to go. If that driver of that heavy goods vehicle makes a mistake, does not see you, there's nowhere to go. You're going to get crushed against that barrier. So again, you know, it's things that we're saying, look, we don't want infrastructure like this where we've got cyclists. The Dalkeith bypass, anybody here know the Dalkeith bypass? Opened back in about 2008 or something. Big downhill, it's about 2 miles downhill. A double white line, 2+1 a layout. So 2 lanes coming uphill, 1 lane going down a hill. We had Stuart talking earlier. What was the magic number where you can't cross the solid line to pass a cyclist? 10 miles an hour. Right, okay, with my ungodly frame, which is well out of shape these days, I could freewheel down there faster than 10 miles an hour. The visibility is fantastic for miles. Drivers can see there. And drivers will pass you. But the concern being is that we also mentioned that with a double white line system, most people know you get naughty boy points on your license if you cross the double white line. So they'll tend to avoid brazenly passing you. They'll try and sneak past you, which is a close path, right? So situations like this, so we see lots and lots of things around the road network. But then we come to the bit where Malcolm's involved and we do the audits and things and get involved in it. It's a new infrastructure and it's great. You know, so it's between Powmill and Crooked Devon. They widened the path. So it's a shared path. It's great. It's connecting the 2 villages for cycling. Unless you're cycling there on a dreich Scottish day, as if that ever happens, and the traffic counter there, they came back and they put their control pillar for the traffic counter, that grey box, that kind of dreich, grey box. On the cycle path, as you're cycling along there, being dazzled by the wonderful LED headlights we have in cars, right? You know, it's simple, you know, it's not hard. We're not talking rocket science here, is it? It's just sit back and think what might actually happen. We go down to Leven in Fife. If you're really keen, you can take a train to Leven now. Fantastic. New cycle path, footpath at the side, but they left the CCTV column in the middle of the cycle path. You know, there's nothing to mark you, nothing to guide you around it. You're just going to happen upon it with your face. And again, you know, step back, you know, think. So a lot of our work that we're doing with road safety audits is we get designs and we see things like this and we're saying, designers, come on, you know, don't have that there. Or if it has to, if you can't move it, you need to mark it up, you need to make it visible so people can get around it. And then one of my favourite parts here, it's like a step to the right. So you'll be cycling along on the left, doing the time warp, over to the right, dodging the people in the pedestrian crossing, And the pedestrians, they just go straight into the car park. They're coming in the opposite direction. They don't get a choice. So, as we keep saying, it's not hard. And we get to Edinburgh. It just went down really storm on Monday night, so it's Edinburgh. Leaf Walk. The mention thing about here is that there's no radiuses on the curves. Everything's done as a taper, which is great if you're on a unicycle. But if you've got a back wheel which follows you and cuts the corner, it's a problem. And then, it's a pinch point. They've narrowed it down there. They've got a nice metal cover there, which will be nice and slippery when it gets wet. We've got a electrical box right outside, just to be able to catch your pedals as you're avoiding the person who's cutting the corner coming to work, So many things, right? And as we keep saying, this is my life, right? We go about looking at these things and we're trying to get them out, design them out. Because many cyclists, everybody loves this sign. That's my favourite sign, right? It really is. Could you imagine cycling from John O'Groats to Gland's End, and a mile out of John O'Groats, you see that sign? When are you allowed to get back on your bike, right? Anyway, that's the sign that designers uses to say, I don't know, right? I don't know what to do. And it is difficult and it is very complex. And what I've got is I dragged Malcolm here from Glasgow, so he's a local boy, to talk to you about some of the stuff we've been doing, because in my time as a road safety engineer and road safety auditor, I'm going to really set him up now. He's probably one of the better designers I've worked with, if not one of the best for cycle infrastructure. And he's going to talk about some of the work that hopefully you'll be aware of.
Think so. Can everybody hear me? Okay, we'll get the right way around. Okay, I'm Malcolm Hall. Work for Glasgow City Council. I'm an engineering officer and I'm the project manager, lead designer on the Connecting Woodside project. Some of you might be aware of it. One of the things that we'd look to do, first of all, obviously, is look to our design guides. Handily, Cycling by Design was updated in 2021. Unfortunately, the Connecting Woodside project first started in 2017. So we were relying on the 2010 version, which the principles didn't effectively change. The adaptability was the only one that got added in 2021, which made a bit of a change. But the sort of last top point there, the connected, closing the title, Connecting Woodside. So it's Scotland's first area-based active travel project. And it's looking at being part of Glasgow's city network. So we're looking to have a network of connected routes by 2031. And, that's reasonably ambitious, but a mixture of segregated routes and low traffic streets. That's where Woodside sits, if people aren't particularly aware. And like I said, it's Scotland's first area-based active travel project. So looking at things a bit more holistically instead of an independent route, trying to work out which streets would be suitable for segregated infrastructure in terms of large volumes of traffic, the available width, that's also important. And then which streets can complement them with lower traffic. So for us, essentially, like the entire project area ended up becoming a 20-mile-an-hour zone, apart from the major A roads that we had through the project area. And then we're looking at things like the key trip generators. How can we get people to shops? How can we make sure they can access the swimming pool, the schools, all that kind of thing are right there in the kind of planning phase. And what's great is that there was Queen's Cross Housing Association was a major, or is a major housing stock owner in the area, and they had a kind of complementary project as well, which fit in quite well with what we were doing. Again, some of you might be aware of this route. It's Garscube Road, so the picture at the top, nothing there. Not a very nice place to cycle, not particularly welcoming. 4 lanes of traffic, lot of vehicles using that road per day. But you can see by looking at the picture down below, it doesn't take, take it on a sunny day, obviously. But, it doesn't take much to add in that separated, segregated infrastructure there and providing you that buffer from what can sometimes be like not just high volumes, but like heavy vehicles and things like that as well. So what's the tools in the toolbox that we're going to use to design cycle routes? We're going to reallocate road space. Number one thing that you're going to do. You can't build a segregated cycle lane without taking some of the road space. Top picture, you'll see there that road, 13 meters wide, something like that. It's a two-way traffic. It's not a 4-lane road at that point. So essentially you can add in the cycle lane there, still end up with a 2-way road, have build outs for bus stops, that kind of thing. So along with that, that'll help to reduce speeds by narrowing the road slightly. It's not the whole solution. You're not going to create a safe road by just doing that. There's some other things that you would want to use. So people that might have a relatively keen eye there, if you can see it, you might see the pedestrian sign on the lamppost. So it's sheltered housing right next to that. So this slide really is about traffic cam, and it's probably quite hard to see, but there's a raised table in there, a speed table. And the reason that we're putting that there is we know there's vulnerable pedestrians looking to go in and around that area, cross that road, access the bus stop, that kind of thing. So can we do that and help to do that safely? It's also a connection point to a quiet way route. So you want to slow that traffic on approach to potentially cycles crossing, leaving segregation and looking to enter into that quiet way network. Was there any success? Did we reduce any of the speed? I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. That's 15 mile an hour reduction in the 85th percentile speed. I mean, that's taken right at that speed table. So, you know, it's slightly cheating. It's not the whole route, but, you know, it's still an impressive reduction in speed on that route. Right here, this is a commitment to prioritising walking and cycling by part of the route. So again, if anybody's used this junction, you'll know that kind of travelling north to south, in the design stage, we always looked at that as being the primary movement. We had traffic counts done, cycle counts, and I think post, it totally bore out that that was exactly what was going on there. And that junction, if you're making that movement, you get roughly about 50% of the junction cycle time. And the reason for that is that you then phase the cycles in with traffic. So like it's really something that you want to try and do as a designer is look at how to make cycles and pedestrians move at the same time as traffic, because traffic's always going to get a lot of time. Where do we see the most accidents? Side road junctions, pretty much. You know, I would imagine a lot of people here have had incidents at a side road junction. So again, we can't control people's behaviour, but what we can do is try and use a set of tools to create a safer environment. So looking at this, what we've done is we've raised the carriageway, tried to highlight the cycle lane. You notice it's a bit more red through there, and that's through the use of chips in the asphalt, so like heavily chip it more. We won't use, as a local authority, we wouldn't use a screed. We wouldn't use a single multicolour asphalt, and that's purely for maintenance purposes. If somebody then cuts a track through it, we can't replace that. It ends up looking like a patchwork quilt pretty soon. And that's, again, that's operational sort of concern that we have to take into consideration. We've added markings, thermoplastic markings, two-way arrows, again, trying to let people know it's two-way cycle route. Some bollards to provide that vertical visibility. And this is at the access to an industrial estate. So at the bottom, you're having to design and cater for vehicles of that sort of size. And you'll see there that if you can see it, they're incredibly close to the edge of the cycle lane, and they're incredibly close to the other side of the road. There's not a lot of room there other than what's been installed effectively. We've also installed, if you can see in the background there, it's a cycle activated sign, which looks a little bit like this. As you cross over a loop in the carriageway, a bit of pressure sends a signal to that sign, which activates and flashes up. This isn't a solution. This is part of the tools in the toolbox. So if you're thinking about somebody like Dave Brailsford, looking at percentage gains, not looking at a complete solution, you're looking to try and put in something else that may help. So in this instance, at this location, what I was trying to think about was a right turning vehicle. That if you've got that two-way traffic in there, what I was concerned about was that the right turning vehicle waiting to make the turn wouldn't be visible, wouldn't have visibility of a cyclist coming up on the inside. I mean, they're looking about, and the best driver in the world may still miss that, especially on an adapted cycle, an e-cycle, something like that. Not saying that it's going to avert an accident at all, but it's going to give that potential. It's going to flash up. And if you catch that out your eye and you're aware, then you'll know there's somebody coming. Forgot to mention there, just noticed it on the bottom there. It also counts cycle traffic as well. So dual functional. Along this route, there's 14 points where we can count cycles where they cross electric loops that are traffic signals as well, same sort of thing. And from there, what we can try and do is plan network connectivity a little bit better. We see where people are getting on, off the route. The numbers go up, go down, depending on that. A pretty staple design, cycle lane design, a floating bus stop, but relatively contentious. You know, the design itself, I mean, it's got a zebra crossing, a raised zebra crossing. It's got some tactile paving, slow markings. It's really pretty obvious what needs to be done there. If you're on a bike, you give way to somebody crossing to the bus stop. But not everybody, there's more vulnerable road users, particularly pedestrians, that don't really see that as being a safe piece of infrastructure. Now, that may be perception, might be behavior, but in terms of the design itself, you know, you could look to over-engineer, and I've seen some in Ireland that have put traffic signals in. You know, and if you're going to ignore a zebra crossing, why would you obey a traffic signal? You know, so it's trying to find a solution to a problem that could potentially be behavioural. The bottom picture is a design drawing. This is an organisational decision by Glasgow that we're going with. So the changes are you'll have a thermoplastic on the cycle lane with a pedestrian on it. You've then got actual give way markings at the zebra crossing instead of the usual markings, and some tactile paving in the cycle lane in case somebody strays off track and doesn't make it back to the footway. The shelter as well, that's a sort of important thing. Like with the design, you have to design for the situation. So in this location, you've got a high number of buses, but a low number of passengers. So in terms of the orientation of the shelter, I felt visibility was a better thing to go for in terms of, I wasn't concerned about people spilling into the cycle lane and trying to corral them by the back of a shelter. I was thinking more of, can we make sure that the visibility is good so that we don't have any interactions? Because when visibility is good, you've got a better chance of avoiding any kind of conflict. And then here again, I said earlier, it predates the Cycling by Design update. So not sure we would install this solution at this place. It's not a particularly favourable option. But in this location, there was a bus stop historically there. You've got two high-rise flats to the back, and you've not really got the space to the rear to provide a full floating bus stop. So with this, we looked at the bus border option. Now you've got 12 buses on this route, 1 an hour, and we did passenger counts. You get 24 on a day. It'll vary, obviously, but on the days we counted, it was 24 people. So you've got two people either on or off the bus per hour at that location. As a designer, thinking about risk, thinking about what to do with that, likelihood versus severity. Severity, you know, it could be subjective, but the likelihood's very low. So that became, you know, not the greatest option, but one of the only options. And we haven't had any in terms of negative feedback or any reported incidents. Again, the design drawing below is what we would do now. We'd only use it on the one-way cycle track, and you would have tactile paving, create an area shared space, give way markings on approach, ramped and raised up through the bus stop. So got to spot the difference. Again, does anybody know the junction that's potentially used it before? So the one on the left, that's what you could have won. The one on the right was what you actually did get. So if you're looking at the changes, this came out of a road safety audit. So the design on the left has an island in the middle of the road. And the comment was, we're concerned about how can pedestrians find the crossing points with the stagger? What guidance measures are you going to use to get them to identify the crossing? And this sat for the guidance measure is guardrail. That's what you would use. But in terms of knowing that that's not what we want to install, what we're going to do. So I'm done. I tried different things. In the drawing, it's shown is tactile paving. It's a guidance measure. Should work, yeah. But we could do better. So in terms of that, we removed the stagger crossing completely when we rethought that. That provided enough space to add a green buffer strip down that side there, which really then led on to thinking about, well, wait there, can we shift the whole entire island down a little bit on the other side and put another buffer strip in and plant some trees? Well, yeah, turns out we could. Was the route successful? Numbers, really slow. It first opened 2021, so the numbers are relatively small. They grew quite a bit for a couple of years, and then we've got a little bit of work at the bottom, which may be affecting this, maybe not. But the numbers are a bit different. So more cyclists, potentially more accidents. So we've kind of got the post, anything being there, relative, few accidents there. 21, 22, we'll start to get a couple of cycle accidents, which again is not something that you would be particularly surprised about. We've increased the numbers quite a bit. We're probably going to increase the accidents. But what I was interested in is where were the accidents happening and what was happening? So they were happening at the side road junctions. Again, not surprising. Why don't we go back and have a look and see what else we can do here? So in terms of looking at that, we swapped those black bollards out for yellow ones, higher visibility. Put some cycles ahead, cycles crossing ahead, signage on the carriageway, and then just put in a couple of extra signs there. But that's not going to particularly satisfy me in terms of have we made it safe? So what we're doing at the moment is we're monitoring these junctions with AI technology, which uses 3D object recognition. It's based on your time to collision, the speed you're going at, things like that, and you can set those parameters. So a near miss effectively is subjective. Each person is going to have a different amount of distance that they're going to think is a near miss. So with this, you set parameters in terms of what you want, and then it will give you the data. So what's coming next for Connecting Woodside? It's in construction right now, St George's Road. And one of the things that I did was learn the lesson from Garscube Road. The accidents were close to the side roads. So what's the best thing in terms of risk removal is to remove the risk. So we removed the risk entirely by taking out any uncontrolled interactions on the entire route. So you're signalised entirely. There's a trade-off there though. Those key design principles meant that the safety went up, but in terms of the sort of efficiency of the route, you're going to have to stop and start a little bit. For you guys, this might be a bit frustrating, but for somebody who's maybe 12 years old, goes to one of the schools in and around there, or you're a parent of them, maybe that would give you a bit of comfort to let them cycle to school. Because for me, the driving principle there was that the kids that cycle today could potentially become the drivers tomorrow. And having that empathy for that situation may, over time, improve driver behaviour. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we've got time now for the Q&A. I'll invite all our panel members back up. And then after our Q&A, we do have a prize given, and some of the raffle tickets that you bought at the start. So if you have all my panel members up. I don't know if we'll need We need the microphone to chuck around though.
Are we okay?
Yeah, in fact, you guys can have a big. Okay.
Right.
Okay, have you got any questions in the audience?
I've got a question from Malcolm. Yeah.
Speaking of.
Here we go. Is that working?
Yes.
So, a question from Malcolm. The South City Way was the first of the major infrastructure to go in. And as a frequent user, I have criticisms of it. It was also heralded as the exemplar of what was going ahead, and that would be based on that. I think there are a lot of lessons that could have been learned from the South City Way. Did you learn lessons from that? And if so, what were they?
So in terms of that, you know, I would say that one of the things that you really have to remember is that the cycle design, the pace it moves at, is really, really quick. You know, we started the Connecting Woodside project 2017. So, you know, the design for Garskew Road was done in 2017. St. George's Road was 2019. So, yeah, it gets tweaked as you go along. But you can find by the time you procure somebody to build it, go through all the design, actually construct it, the design choices that you made in those, you know, potentially 3 to 4 years before it was built become out of date. You know, so that's one of the things I would say. Secondly, in terms of South City Way, it's not particularly, it's a different style of route. You know, if I was looking at a route that had like a highly built up area, in terms of Garskew Road, it's not particularly that. And then St. George's Road itself, it's got elements of that, but it's not quite the same. So it's not something that it's unidirectional compared to sort of bi-directional. So I'm not sure if you would be driving at side road junction choices, but you know, in terms of what I would look to do, what I showed was how I would approach that.
I'm really very much thinking about the side road junctions because some of them are very aggressively flared going across the South City Way, and they give me the fear when I go near them. And that shouldn't be like that on a cycleway. And I would like to know that you would be avoiding those sorts of junctions in the future.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, look, again, on Garskew Road, you're looking at, and I showed the picture of the HGV coming out, but the thing, you have to design for what that area or that route that's been installed in, what kind of traffic it's got to cope with. So, you know, sometimes there's not a particular way around that, but if you're raising the carriageway, you should be.
Well, they actually took out, there were raised tables in the design for the South City Way. They removed in the final build.
I can't comment.
It's the case, yeah. Butterbiggins Road was one.
Thanks. I think it's perhaps a question for both of you over there. I've had a couple of holidays on the continent. We're in France recently, been to Brussels, and there are lots of zebra crossings. Now, as a child, well, I'm not quite sure when we stopped using zebra crossings, but they always had Belisha beacons, didn't they, in the UK? You see all these in other countries that don't. If you're standing just probably within a metre of a zebra crossing, cars will stop. You know, and you almost feel you've got to go across, even if you didn't mean to. We now have zebra crossings on cycle lanes, but I'm sure lots of people won't ever remember there being zebra crossings with the Belisha beacon that cars were expected to stop at when you're expected to put your foot just down on the crossing to indicate that you wanted to cross. And we don't have that now. So I wonder why you expect people on bikes to stop on a cycle lane when we've stopped using zebra crossings on a road. And just if there's any sort of reason or explanation for that change.
So look, you know, in terms of that, it's something that actually really frustrates me, because as a designer, like I say, this is an internationally recognized piece of like infrastructure. Everybody knows what to do, regardless of Belisha beacons or not. That to me, I would say, like, in terms of people obeying that's potentially a behavioural issue as opposed to a design issue, which isn't passing the buck.
Well, it's interesting when we talk about other countries, and back to my analogy with this movie, when you've got infrastructure like that in countries where there's a good uptake on cycling and even walking, just pedestrians, so your Denmark, your Holland, Belgium, France, then there is a different psyche in the driver. They're more used to it, they're more accepting of it. And it frustrates me because I hear a lot of people saying, oh, what about here? If I go to the other end, you should look at dash cam videos from Ukraine, Russia, Belarus, right? And see how much product a pedestrian has on one of these crossings, and it's absolutely horrific. And there was a presentation, I think it was a year or a couple of years ago, and it was somebody doing investigations into zebra crossings, and when they started putting, you know, in London, you get these schemes who've got funny colours on the roads and all that up to the crossings. And the people in a number of our neighbouring countries on the continent were saying, we actually love your road zebra crossing because it has the zigzags and things, and they're really, really clear, where our ones just have a blue sign and the marking. So it's all kind of swings and roundabouts. It's all a lot's down to, you know, the psyche, how people respond to the different situations.
Right. Can I just add to that quickly? There's a really good bit of research by Professor Ian Walker, which talks about motor normativity, and the UK is a really motor normative place. So cars dominate our streets and how we think. And if you go to the continent, that's not really the case. And I was just in Spain last week, and you're very lucky to have me back, I have to tell you. But you, as you say, you go up to it, you approach, you kind of feel like a nuisance for not crossing the road. And that concept of motor normativity is really worth, there's a really good GCN video as well, if you want to check that out on YouTube. It's worth having a look at.
Thank you. Anecdotally, a few years ago, I was in Vietnam, and in Vietnam, where obviously you've got all the mopeds and such like, and a wee old woman said, you just walk, people will avoid you. And it worked, bizarrely. Malcolm, I've got a question for you in terms of the engineering, and I'm thinking back to as a child growing up in the 70s and starting to ride a bike in the early 70s, and the number of cars that were on the road, etc. at that point in time. And whilst I'm not really a great advocate of cycle lanes, because I'd much rather that people could all actually run on the same road and actually do it properly and take care of each other. I kind of wonder if we have to, as generations, go to the point of going, right, separate people out, and in years to come, and probably by the time you're retired, it will come through that maybe we'll be able to do away with those cycle lanes, because motorists and cyclists, pedestrians will all have learned about how to look after each other on the roads and take care of each other. What's your thoughts on that as an engineer?
My thoughts are, so I would probably, like, you know, talking about in the early 70s. So recently we finished a project at Charing Cross, and that was initially designed with the way that you walk at the moment. That wasn't actually there. Was an afterthought to have pedestrians that were meant to go a circuitous route over flyovers and things like that. I think that there's potential. I'd say there's hope and potential, you know, and the one reason I would say that is that there's potentially driverless cars. So if you remove the human element from the vehicle, how does that vehicle react? Obviously, there's issues with recognize and identify and that sort of thing. But does that potentially make things safer? You know, I don't know, I could throw it back and say, what do you think?
Yeah.
It's about safety, it's about pleasure as well, and I would like being secondly involved. It's a much more pleasant cycling experience, and that's not just down to dying or being hit by a vehicle. I've been cycling for decades, and I have to say in the last certainly 10 years, what cycling in Glasgow is hugely busy. And I think there's a long way to go, but you know, I can cycle now all over Glasgow, out to Cunningar, Southside, and not really go near roads. But that takes a little bit of insider knowledge, and I wish some women that are new to cycling could find it a little bit easier to navigate around the city with, you know, on lovely Kellyford South.
Like the city council have to.
So-
I think the city council have to maintain them, like there's a cycle lane in Wilton Drive, and it's got those armadillo things. And they're just an accident waiting to happen, plus the actual cycle lane itself is full of debris. It's full of debris.
Do you know what? I would agree with you, like 100%. There's no point building these things if we're not going to maintain them. I think there is a commitment from Glasgow to do that. You know, I can't comment on the specific, you know, I'll talk about anything I was involved in, and I'm happy to. Anything that's I'm not involved in, I don't really want to talk about in terms of that. But maintenance wise, I would totally agree with you. There's no point having them full out. Yeah.
It's the central place, but not if you're.
So I'm glad I didn't have a Casper Schmeichel moment there when you threw the ball. So just to comment on the travel thing, I think in our experience here in Glasgow is that there's lots of drivers, whereas in Europe there's lots of people that are multimodal. So they've got lots of experience walking, cycling. I think we've got too many people who all they do is drive and walk from their house to the car, and that's it. My question is around speed limits. I'm mindful that the PC is no longer here, but I was conscious of one of the comments he made about the resource that a serious incident takes, and that covers yourself, Ros, all the way through that whole process. But there does seem to be some friction between I'm going to say the road authority level or the local authority level who set speed limits, but then it's Police Scotland that have to enforce the speed limits. And it feels like a no-brainer to say, right, obviously there's the 20-mile-an-hour proposals, but there's certain roads that are not being reduced that potentially should be reduced. And I'm going to say consistencies work out in the west of the city around by Victoria Park, and you've got sections that go 30, 40, 30, then you're onto the expressway at 50. And I just wondered what your thoughts were on that. You know, we hear from Police Scotland, well, nothing will happen until someone gets injured or killed. We hear, well, unless there's engineering done, if it's just paint and signage, we're not going to support speed reduction. And then from the council's perspective, it's like often it's, well, the police are not going to support this, so we're going to do that. I just wondered what your thoughts are on that speed reduction debate.
So in terms of that, I think Glasgow has aspirations to have the entire city as a 20-mile-an-hour zone. One of the sort of issues with that is that quite a bit goes into it, actually, before you can reduce the speed. So you have to take a speed survey, first of all, to find out the existing speed of the road. So, and at some point, if it's above a threshold, it's something like 24 miles an hour. I can't remember off the top of my head. But at that point, you need to install traffic calming measures and things like that to have it down and classified at a 20. So I think there's, you know, if they can do away with the requirement for additional infrastructure, but again, it's hard because then you're looking at trying to control that behavior. How are you doing that? Who is actually going to enforce it? You know, the best way probably to enforce it is by having good conscientious drivers that drive at the correct speed limit, and everybody else has to sit behind them. But you know, that's not a particularly great solution either. Sorry.
Yeah, just getting out the back.
I was quickly on that. I was just saying we had we're watching eagerly what's happening in Wales at the moment, because what they did was they changed legislation at a high level where a restricted road, which historically a restricted road is a 30-mile-an-hour road with a system of street lighting. A restricted road is now 20-mile-an-hour with a system of street lighting, and they've done it blanket across Wales. So we're watching, we're seeing what's happening there and how people respond to it. One more.
So I come along London Road, which is great. It's they're having segregated lanes. What I'm wondering is if there's any move to change how lights are happening for bikes. So the ones that I come along frequently fail, especially in poor conditions. I think maybe the piezo sensor fails when there's water in it or something like that. Happens quite a lot in Glasgow. And also there is clearly an issue where they don't trigger if you pass through a light when all of the lights are on red. And so I'm wondering, is there a move to improve like those options? I'm interested because actually one of the things you said earlier was really important that you're considering why you would need to stop us a little bit more often than maybe you would like. So that's fair enough. That explains one of the parts of it, but it's really problematic. I've waited 4 times before and watched a stream of cyclists who ignore the red lights go past me, trying to trigger these repeatedly. And I know how they work, and I still can't manage to make them trigger.
So yeah, we're always looking at new technologies, and money is always a driving factor. So cutting a loop in the carriageway and sticking cables in there and putting in solar powered kind of units to power all this costs a lot of money. So you're going to want to look at different options. At present, it's been decided that the piezoelectric sensor is the most reliable that we've got. But what I have seen is trials of radar, microwavable detection. Again, it's not something I'm directly involved in, but the feedback that I have heard is that they're not as reliable at this stage. But looking at the AI technology that we're using to monitor junctions, the potential is there. It just requires a certain product to be able to do a similar job.
So without changing any of the infrastructure, you could just set the lights up to go around to cycles automatically.
In terms of that, you probably could, but every junction that we install is effectively, it's like it's on adaptive control. So in terms of, you'll kind of get the same amount of time, you'll generally get the same sequence. So, if you use a junction often, you'll probably be able to predict these things. But in terms of that,
but it's automatic for the cars, but the cycles only work if it's triggered.
Yes, so it depends again what you're using. So like if you have that route on Garskip Road that I mentioned, if I phase you in with a car, that phase is always going to run. The thing with cycles and pedestrians is if there's nobody there, there's no need to run the cycle. Effectively, the junction's less efficient. So, in terms of looking at it like that, it's not about motor traffic being dominant. It's purely about it being efficient. So
I think that's a fair point, but I think we also need to measure efficiency with people being significantly disadvantaged as a result of actually keeping to the law, which is what's happening to me literally daily.
Yeah, we need stuff that works. Look, yeah. I appreciate that. I haven't experienced those sort of problems with the piezoelectrics. I do find them quite reliable, but I don't know the London Road route very well myself. So, yeah.
Okay, folks, I know there's probably still a lot more